Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen is demanding OP's life insurance payout. My late husband's mother is demanding his life insurance money. My husband and I were both in our early 40s, married for 6 years, when he passed suddenly a few months ago. It's been the hardest thing I've ever faced, and honestly, I've just been trying to survive each day since. Right after he passed, his mom, my mother-in-law, stepped in and insisted on paying for all of the funeral expenses. I was completely out of it, just in a fog, and really grateful for the help. Here's the thing. I totally forgot that my husband had a small life insurance policy through my job. I only remembered it recently and filed a claim, received a payout. It's not a huge amount of money, but enough to help me move back across the country to be with my family, and maybe put something down on a modest home so I can start over. When my mother-in-law found out about the insurance payout, she flipped out. She's demanding I pay her back for the funeral costs and accusing me of using her son. She said some hurtful things about me, calling me selfish and implying I'm somehow profiting off of his passing. But she offered to pay for the funeral, and I truly didn't know about the insurance money at the time. I'm still so broken over losing him, and the thought of being called heartless just adds to the pain. I know she's grieving too, but I'm trying to do what's best for me to heal and move forward. So, am I the jerk if I don't give her the money? I'm already barely holding it together, and I just need a chance to rebuild my life. Everyone sucks here. When you found out that you were going to be getting a payout from the insurance company, in my opinion, you should have let her know and offered to pay her back for the funeral expenses. Whether she chose to accept it or not is up to her, but I think the right thing to do would be to at least offer, even if some time had passed by that point. Sounds to me like she said some pretty cruel stuff. Seems like she crossed the line. On the plus side, you probably won't have to talk to her ever again anyways. Seems fair to just give her half of the funeral expenses if you can. Then cut all contact with her since you have no kids. She crossed a line with her insults, and she can never fix that. In other words, she showed her true nature. You're the jerk, to be honest. You should at least give her some of the money. Both of you are grieving, and it's common for people who are grieving to be a bit, not selfish, but self-centered as a way to protect themselves. I don't think you're a selfish person, but you are only thinking about yourself, which is understandable in a crisis. Here's the thing. Funerals are not cheap, and his mother had to pay for the funeral and was supporting you. The least you can do is reimburse her. I'm genuinely sorry for both of your losses, and I hope that the relationship was not damaged by this misstep, as you both will need each other. It's okay if you need to tell her that you needed to hear from some peers to realize the mistake. My girlfriend, who's 24, wanted another pet. I, 27, said no. My girlfriend loves animals. She works as a legal secretary and also has a side job as a small animal specialist. She's been working in this field for 4 years, and after securing her real job, she decided to keep her side job for fun. At home, we have 2 dogs and 2 cats, all of which are her pets. Her jobs are highly demanding, and when she's not working, she's in the den organizing huge dog adoption events. Every 4 or 5 months, she manages to bring about 60 dogs up from shelters around the US and to find homes for all of them. I think it's really cool that she does this, but she literally stays up until 3 a.m. planning flights and coordinating people to get the dogs to a holding center safely. Then she wakes up at 6 a.m., goes to work until 5 p.m., and works on her other job until 10 p.m. After all that, she comes home and repeats the process. On her days off, she's taking the dogs to the park or going on hikes. She lavishes her pets with new beds, the best food, and when she's working, she sends the dogs to daycare. As you can see, her days are filled with animals, and I feel like I'm not even a part of this relationship. When she's not with animals, she's reading or doing her own thing. We've gone out to dinner together maybe twice in the past month. She isn't distant or rude. She always lets me know what she's doing and asks if I want to help or join her in the park or on a hike. But the thing is, I don't want to, because it's always about the animals and not me. Anyway, last night before we went to bed, she told me she was thinking about getting a tree frog to put in the den because she really likes the calming presence they give off. That was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. I told her that was insane. I told her I was tired of all this animal stuff she's involved in. I told her she needed to grow up. I said absolutely no to the tree frog idea. At first, she was quiet, but then she said something about how animals are her passion and what she does isn't stupid. She'll never get tired of animals and that I have my own hobbies too, but she doesn't think mine are stupid or childish. She then started getting upset and cried before leaving the room. When I woke up, I found her asleep on the living room floor with the dogs. It's not like we're being overrun with animals, but the amount of them in my life is starting to aggravate me. She even brings random lizards home to nurse them back to health. Isn't this all a little insane? She's always loved animals, but now that she's making a substantial amount of money, she's doing more for them than ever. Now, she wants another animal to fawn over and spend hundreds of dollars on each week. No, I guess I'm just venting for the most part. I feel bad for the way she feels, but I still think the time she invests in animals is crazy, and since she's in a relationship with me, she should act like it. Why would you tell her to grow up? She is grown up, and yes, animals are her hobby. She makes time for her hobby. I think you're just resentful because you aren't spending time with her. She has a right to be upset with what you said. Why don't you sit her down and explain that you think her hobby is great, but that it's very time-consuming? You'd like to spend more time with her and do other things, not just things related to animals. Think of some activities you both haven't experienced and that aren't related to your hobbies. Create a new hobby you can share so you can set aside time for it every week. OP gets heavily downvoted. I told her to grow up because she's spending thousands of dollars to fly dogs to and from places when she could be using that money to help homeless kids. I mean, if she was so determined to donate, why not to that cause? I was with you up until this statement. Who the heck are you to decide what charities are important? There are millions of charities in the US. Is every single one that you don't agree with wrong? Are you the only person in the world who gets to decide what's important? Your basic issue with your girlfriend is that she doesn't spend enough time with you. That's a perfectly rational reason to break up. But trying to tear down her work, which she's so passionate about, makes you look like an immature jerk. But then you'd be writing about how your girlfriend is too focused on homeless children and still doesn't pay attention to you. OP: No, I see the point in donating money to homeless children, and actually doing something about it is even cooler. I honestly don't understand why she needs to dedicate so much time to animals. Update: After reading comment after comment about how I didn't support my girlfriend or care about her passions, I started to see where I went wrong. I do care about her passions. I personally am burnt out from all the animal care. I should have communicated that better instead of blowing up on her. I still, no matter how many protesting comments I get, will never understand why she donates so much money just to animals and not to anything else. That's why I told her to grow up. Also, I think her passion for animals is childish, sort of like how kids love fairies or mermaids. I feel like it's a phase she never grew out of. I love dogs too, but her deep love for animals is something I overlooked because she's always had good jobs and she's very pretty. I think a lot of people were misguided in calling me a jerk simply because I missed spending time with my girlfriend. No, I'm not jealous of lizards. I think it's absurd to come home and find her bandaging up some lizard's foot or opening my fridge to find a tub of mealworms to feed said lizard. I've always loved how dedicated she is to things. Whatever she's doing, she gives it 100%. I just wish she would direct that passion towards things that really matter. Helping animals is nice, but it's not really changing the world. However, I am still deeply in love with the beautiful, sensitive, loving girl I met 5 years ago, and all the comments made it clear that I was being rude to her. So I wrote her an apology letter and went to the nearest pet store to buy her a tree frog. I got the tank and lamp and even bought crickets. I set up the entire tank in the den where she wanted it and named the tree frog Jinx. I thought my apology and me buying the tree frog would help her see that I care and that her passions are cool. Anyway, I waited for Jessica to get home, and when she did, I told her to go look in the den. She seemed upset still and said, "Thank you for the tree frog. I actually bought one before I got off work and had a friend set up the tank for me. It's in my car. I'm going to go get it. Thank you." She brought the tank in and asked if we could talk for a bit in our room because she had some things on her mind. She said she didn't want to jump to conclusions, but our relationship wasn't heading in the direction she wanted, and maybe I should find someone more suited to what I like. Someone who lives a quieter, less busy life. I explained to her that I love her deeply and just want her to tone down the animal side of things, but she said she couldn't, because not only is it her passion, but all the money she makes from being an animal specialist goes to helping the animals for adoption, vet care, housing, and to support the people who foster the animals when she can't. She said if she toned anything back, she would lose a huge part of herself, and I thought she was being extreme. I told her I loved her, and that if that's her choice, then I'd support it. She said she loved me too, but my actions showed I couldn't and wouldn't support her. She referred to many instances in our past when I refused to show up to her adoption events, the most memorable being when I wasn't there when she was accepting an award. It all became very clear that she didn't want to be with me anymore and was choosing animals over me. I accepted it and told her to live her life as she pleases. I also told her that I thought she should donate money to homeless kids too. She said, sure. Do you know of any organizations I could help with?" But I didn't have any suggestions, and I was already angry, and I felt like that was a slap to the face. She said I was missing the point. We ended the conversation shortly after that, with us splitting up and her saying there are things in life I don't understand and that she couldn't make me understand. It's frustrating for both of us. I agree with her about the frustration part. She said I could take as much time as I needed to clear my head and I was allowed to stay here until I found a new place to live. Unfortunately, the house is hers and life will be weird for a while. I think our relationship is over. Am I the jerk for telling my dad he chose between me and his fiancée when he prioritized her surgery over mine? I, 17 female, have had a rocky relationship with my dad. My parents married after I was born, hoping to provide a stable family for me, but they divorced when I was 11 after my dad went to rehab. Things only worsened from there. During rehab, he met his current fiancée and they later had a kid together, who's 6. Since then, my dad has been mostly absent from my life. Whenever I have important events, he either has an excuse or doesn't show up. I'd estimate he's been present for less than half of my events since their divorce. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with scoliosis. Initially, surgery wasn't needed. However, my condition got worse, and I was finally scheduled for surgery on November 20th of this year. I told my dad about it months ago, expressing how much I needed his support this time, and he promised that he'd be there. But later, he texted me to say he had planned a vacation that would keep him away until mid-December, just as my recovery period would be ending. It broke my heart, but I accepted it. Then, 2 hurricanes hit his vacation spot, and he told me he'd make my surgery. I felt a glimmer of hope. But then, just a week before my surgery, he texted again saying his fiancé's lung cancer surgery had been scheduled for the same day, a few hours before mine, at a hospital 30 minutes away. He said he might not make it to my surgery, but with him, might not usually means he won't. He added that this wasn't about who he loved more. That message shattered me. I realized that no matter how much I hoped, he might never give me the attention and support I needed. I broke down on my kitchen floor that day. After sitting with my feelings, I texted him to tell him how deeply his actions hurt me. I said it wasn't only about love, but about showing care, that he had given me hope only to let me down again. I questioned if his fiancé's surgery had really been scheduled last minute or if he had known earlier but hadn't told me. I asked him to show me he was my dad through his actions, not his words. He responded, insisting the surgery was only scheduled the day he had told me. But because he's lied in the past to save face, I reached out to someone who might know the truth. I then sent a follow-up message clarifying that my frustration wasn't with his fiancée, it was with his ongoing absence and lack of support. I said that even if his reasons were genuine, he could have at least shown some empathy. I told him I had hoped he'd be a better father for my half-sister than he was for me. In a final message, I made it clear that I was done putting in all the effort to maintain our relationship on my own. I told him that if he wanted to be my dad, I would gladly be his daughter, but if he chose not to, I would be fine with that too. He hasn't responded, and honestly, I'd prefer he sit with what I've said. For once, I hope he really thinks about his actions and the impact that they've had on me. So, am I the jerk? Your father hasn't shown up for your entire life. What makes you think he's going to do it now? And furthermore, why do you allow him to have that power over you? He's not your father. He's the male who impregnated your mother. Stop elevating him to father status. This man is going to support the person who he is making his life with, not the kid he walked away from years ago. He doesn't prioritize you and he never will, no matter what words he uses or promises he makes. Good luck with your surgery and focus on your recovery. Am I the jerk for going behind my wife's back and telling her pregnant sister that she's being cheated on? I've been married to my wife for 3 years. I'm 27 and she's 26. My sister-in-law is 30 and her husband, my brother-in-law, is 31. I've always had a close relationship with my sister-in-law. We're friends. My connection with my brother-in-law isn't as strong, but we get along well enough and we talk often. My wife and her sister, however, don't get along. Their relationship goes beyond typical sibling rivalry. They argue and fight constantly. It's a strained dynamic that I've never fully understood. 3 weeks ago, I was out having dinner with my friends. While chatting, I noticed my brother-in-law at another table. He was dining with a woman who wasn't his wife. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured it could be a friend or a colleague. I considered going over to greet him, but got distracted with my group. Then, I saw him give this woman a light kiss. I was stunned. When I got home, I told my wife everything. I said we needed to tell her sister that her husband was cheating on her. My wife disagreed. She said we should confront my brother-in-law instead of telling her sister. Her reasoning? My sister-in-law is pregnant, and revealing this would ruin their marriage and cause her unnecessary stress. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So what if she's pregnant? I asked. Her husband is cheating on her. Doesn't she deserve to know? I try to convince my wife repeatedly, arguing that her sister still has a right to the truth, regardless of their rocky relationship. But my wife insisted I stay out of it, brushing off my concerns. Yesterday, I finally reached my breaking point. I told my wife that I was going to tell my sister-in-law the truth. I said I couldn't betray her like this. My wife warned me not to. She said if I told her, she wouldn't speak to me anymore. I replied, if you can't see why this is the right thing to do, maybe I won't talk to you either. So I went to my sister-in-law's place and I told her what I'd seen. At first, she was doubtful and asked me to leave. A few hours later, she called me crying. She said she had confronted her husband and everything I said was true. She apologized for doubting me earlier. She also told me she was leaving him. When I asked if she had a place to go or enough money to manage, she admitted she didn't have much. I wired her some money and told her to call me if she needs anything. She thanked me and promised to only use the money if absolutely necessary. Later, my brother-in-law called my wife and she exploded at me. She accused me of ruining her family and her sister's life. I was baffled. I thought we agreed that once we got married, your family became mine and mine became yours. I said, why are you defending your cheating brother-in-law? What about your sister? She had no response and has since refused to speak to me. I tried reasoning with her again, but she shut me out completely. Frustrated, I told her, if you want to divorce me, go ahead. I think I may have just destroyed my marriage, but I genuinely don't know if what I did was wrong. Update. It's been a few days since I told my sister-in-law about the affair. To address speculation, no, I'm not in love with my sister-in-law. I don't have any inappropriate feelings or a relationship with her. I respect her as family and nothing more. Yesterday, I asked my wife why she was so upset about me telling her sister the truth. I said, I know you two don't get along, but she's still your sister. Why didn't you want me to help her? My wife said it wasn't our place to interfere. When I pressed further, asking if she was okay with her sister being cheated on, she admitted she wasn't, but she blamed me for ruining their marriage. She's pregnant, my wife said. The baby needs his father and she needs her husband. I was floored. What? So you're saying that betrayal doesn't matter because she's pregnant? I asked. I decided to test her stance. If I cheated on you, would you forgive me? I asked. She said yes. Then I asked, if you cheated on me, would you tell me? Again, she said yes, but added that she wouldn't expect me to ruin our family over it. Her answers left me speechless. She seemed to think betrayal wasn't a big deal as long as the family stayed intact. When I told her I had sent my sister-in-law some money to help her out, she lost it. She screamed at me, saying I shouldn't have helped her sister because she doesn't like her. I snapped back, saying, if that's how you feel, maybe we should just divorce. She angrily agreed, started packing, and left. I tried to stop her. I told her I loved her and that I only did what I felt was right, but she wouldn't listen. She left, and now no one knows where she is. Her parents and friends have no idea, and they're blaming me for not keeping track of her. I even went to my brother-in-law's place to check if she was there, but I didn't see her car or any of her belongings. I'm angry and hurt that she walked out so easily. In my frustration, I called my sister-in-law and told her she could stay at my house since I was going to stay with my parents for now. I didn't want her to waste money on temporary accommodations. I don't know where my marriage stands anymore. I hate that my wife left me and that I can't trust her anymore. The woman I married feels like a stranger. All I wanted was to do the right thing, and now everything has fallen apart. My wife is demanding to quit her job and be a stay-at-home wife. I'm 28, male, and my wife, who's 31, has recently started to express interest in being a stay-at-home wife to prep for being a stay-at-home mom. We don't have kids and haven't been trying, and before getting married, we talked about kids and work-home arrangement, and we agreed that we'd both work prior to and once we had kids, and agreed that we'd take turns with the stay-at-home portion for the first year or two after potential kids were born, then both go back to work. Now she wants to do away with that and wants to be a stay-at-home wife until we have kids and then be a stay-at-home mom. I don't want that. I never wanted that, and I made that clear from the start when we got serious. I enjoy my job a lot, but my salary can't sustain a family, and I don't want to go back to school and change careers like she wants me to make it happen. I don't want to take up a second job either, knowing I'd still be doing half the housework and childcare. Not that that's a bad thing. Whereas both my mom and her parents are local, she'd have plenty of help during the day and be able to get downtime. We had dinner at my mother's a couple of days ago with my sister and her kids. While we were there, my wife goes, "Your son's being mean. He won't let me be a stay-at-home mom." First, my family took this as she's pregnant and they got excited, so I had to tell them that she wasn't yet. She just wants to be a stay-at-home wife. It turned into this 3-on-1 conversation about how I should let her stay home if that's what she really wants, and I should be taking care of her and finding a way to make this happen for her. Finally, I go, "Would you two help her with the house whenever she needs it?" "Of course, that's what family is for. Especially when you start having kids, we'll help." "Cool. Keep that same energy and help me pay all of our bills and every other expense to upkeep our current quality of life if you feel so strongly she should get to stay home." They did not like that and told me I was being overdramatic. My mom called me stubborn and told me to find corners to cut to afford everything on my salary and drop things like streaming services, some of my hobbies, go from 2 cars to 1, etc. We left and my wife wasn't too happy on the way home. She says I was out of line for saying that to my mom and sister, especially since she thinks I was serious. Was I the jerk for telling my mom and sister to pay our bills if they wanted me to go along with it? Also, please stop with the vasectomy messages. They aren't 100% reversible. Success rates go down each year post-procedure, and I do want kids someday. I am mindful that a baby trap is always possible. Edit 2. Holy wow, this blew up. Thanks everyone for all of your responses. I do know to be careful of oopsie babies right now. For those of you insisting I reconsider, no. Look, I'm glad that stay at home and one income works for you all and you enjoy it, but it's not for me. I'm well aware one income means being financially tight, but it's more than that. I don't want the stress of making sure I'm making enough money on my own with 2 jobs and also doing my part in the house and being a parent. I'd much rather get to spend time with my kids when I have them, not be a stranger that falls asleep at dinner and spends a bit of time like my father was. Since this post was more about my mom and sister, I know all about the issues my wife is presenting at the moment and my options. I'm going to tell them to lay off. Either they do, or I just drop contact with them, but I won't be giving them an ultimatum about it. Not the jerk, because you didn't bring it up to them, your wife did. She was being manipulative and you called her out on it. Be careful, I could see an "oops, we're pregnant, now I have to stay home" moment coming. This is exactly what happened with my brother and his now ex-wife. She loved spending but didn't like working, and even though they had agreed not to have kids for a while, until both of their careers stabilized, she was suddenly, accidentally pregnant. We tried to tell him, but he wouldn't believe it at first. Fast forward a few months, she's off work because the pregnancy was too hard for her to keep working. It might have been, I don't know for certain, but I find it highly suspicious that she managed to have a pregnancy that was simultaneously so horrible she couldn't work, but easy enough that she could travel around the country. My brother was stressed, working overtime in a job he hated, buying the most expensive stuff for the baby because she wanted it, and thousands of dollars in debt. Eventually, he came back to us and told us that she had indeed gotten pregnant on purpose, and that was the end of their marriage. Not the jerk, and make sure all your bases are covered, OP. Your wife has already tried manipulating your family to get her way. I wouldn't be surprised if the accidental pregnancy is next. Not the jerk. I've been here, and the divorce will be horrible once you have kids. Get out now. She's shown her true colors. This is the warning sign. Not the jerk, but this sounds like a huge marinara flag. Anyone who is so entitled and honestly narcissistic before kids is only going to get worse after. Let's be real here. She wants to stay home, not work, still have you be responsible for half the housework, and is pressuring you to change careers away from something you enjoy to be able to afford her a responsibility-free lifestyle. And on top of that, she tried to get your family involved. This reeks of childish entitlement. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Considering you don't have kids yet, this is the perfect opportunity to bounce. Or you could end up being tied to her for the rest of your life. The choice is yours. Am I the jerk for saying no to picking up my son's half-sister from school? I'm a single mom of 2 boys, ages 11 and 10. Their father and I divorced 5 years ago after I learned he was cheating on me. He got her pregnant either right before he told me, and that was why he confessed, or right after. But our divorce was not an easy one. He wanted to stay friends, and I could not look at him after what he did. He and I were together for over 13 years. He was also a friend before he was my boyfriend and husband, and to have him betray me like that and treat me as he had was awful. He married his affair partner. They had a daughter within months of our separation, followed by a son after the divorce and their marriage. Last year, they discovered that his wife had cancer. What followed was a lot of fighting between the 2 of us again. He wanted me to help him and his wife out. He said their kids, who are currently 5 and 3, needed family beyond just him and his wife. His own family disowned him for our divorce. They were extremely religious, and she has no family. I told him it would be over my dead body I would help him. He argued that it was for the kids, and if not for his kids with her, then for our boys, who could see their family heal and be one. I told him he stopped any chance of that happening when he cheated on me. What I did not expect was for him to tell his daughter's school to call me when she got sick. He was at work at the time and couldn't leave apparently because he had already missed a lot of work due to his wife, and she was home recovering from chemo. I got the call, was asked if I would pick her up, and I said no. Several hours later, he went off on me on the phone for leaving his sick kid at school when I knew they had nobody. This is when he told me how he couldn't leave and how his wife was resting. I told him the babysitter for his son should have been called over me. He told me he was in daycare and I should be ashamed because she was a sick kid who's going through a lot and I could have helped. He told me he hoped our sons were going to be ashamed of me. They aren't, and I argued back with him over the phone at the time. But I guess part of me does feel bad for the kid. My sons also sensed an atmosphere while they were with their dad after the incident when they talked about me, and I hate that for them. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. He has the nerve to try to manipulate you after cheating? Those aren't your kids and not your problem. I also feel bad for the girl, but it's his mess to solve. Give an inch, he'll take a mile. Say no now to prevent future problems. OP. That's my concern. I do not want to be part of these two kids' lives in any big way, and if I say yes to one thing, then it gets harder to say no again, and that establishes more of a relationship than I ever want with them. Your ex is trying to use your basic decency to manipulate you. No responsible parent puts down an emergency contact without getting confirmation by the contact. This is all on him. As sad and unfortunate a situation as this is for his kids, you have the right to refuse to be their carer. He put his daughter in this position, not you. He is to blame for any discomfort she may have experienced, not the jerk. Not the jerk. What kind of fool lists his ex-wife as an emergency contact for his affair kid? The audacity of him to get mad at you. The only kids of his you need to care for are the ones you share with him. Do not let him tell you otherwise. Too bad he tanked his own life, but that's not your problem at all. If he can't handle the situation he got himself into, he needs to figure out a way to get himself through it. You're not responsible for his mistakes. While it's unfortunate with his wife, you're still not obligated to help him at all with anything except as related to your own kids. He can apologize and make amends with his family, or go out and make friends and get support that way. It's not your job. You very clearly told him no. He put you on the list anyway, and then screamed at you when you didn't comply with his assignment? Sign your kids up for some counseling, because this guy is a jerk when he does not get what he wants, and they should not have to deal with their father's BS behavior. He cheats, but still wants to be friends after betraying you? His family disowns him, and he demands that you step up because his kids need family? Then he wants you to do it so his boys can see their family heal and become one. He's the one that caused it to break. Still won't comply with his demands, he'll sign you up with the school without your knowledge or consent, then try to manipulate you with guilt, saying your kids will be ashamed. Hello? Does this man have not one friend or neighbor that could pick up a kid from school and drop her off at home? Zero? That's telling. Sounds like people that he can't manipulate with guilt don't hang out with him and don't accept his assignments. Were you also supposed to watch his kid the rest of the day since his wife is resting? Take care of his sick kid and infect yours too? Maybe you should also watch his kid instead of daycare, clean his house, make dinner, and drive her to chemo. His shoes might need to be shined too. You are allowed to say no. You should send a letter, return receipt to the school that says you aren't that kid's emergency contact and their parent put you on the list without your permission. Copy it to your divorce lawyer and your ex. If you give in now, his demands will only increase. He needs to find solutions to his problems that are not volunteering you, not the jerk. If you don't like it, you can leave. All right then. My dad works for an employee-owned civil construction company. They make water processing plants, among other public utility buildings. Contracts can range from $10 to $50 million and more after expenses. They spend the vast majority of said budget on materials. Again, millions of dollars. One company they get parts from is their main supplier of pipes and plumbing doohickeys. They spend about a third of their budget with them, Again, specialty in water treatment plants. He's even received awards for being one of their top 5 customers. 2 years ago, it was a fire hydrant cookie jar, which he found hilarious. This particular job was on the East Coast in a state where my dad has yet to work. As such, he goes to the office personally to meet these people, on principle, mind you. He's just that type of guy. He meets the staff, or most of them. What he didn't know was that one lady was out that day, her day off. Eventually, the budget has been worked out and the structural base has been mostly completed. So my dad calls the suppliers to place his order. You know exactly who he gets, the one lady he didn't get to meet. So the conversation goes a bit like this. Dad: "Hello, this is Dad. I need to order some parts." Lady: "Of course. Do you have an account with us?" Dad: "Yes, this construction company." Lady types a bit. "I'm sorry, but I don't see an account for this construction company." Yes, we do. Could you please check it again?" "I'm afraid we don't have an account for this construction company." Now, it's important to note that A, my dad takes no crap, and he knows she didn't recheck because he couldn't hear her rather loud keyboard typing, and B, to create an account requires a credit history check, which can take 5 to 10 business days to get done. This company, my dad included, runs a tight ship, so this is entirely unacceptable. Dad: "Look, can I speak with the owner? I met him yesterday, and I would like to clear this up quickly." Lady: "I'm afraid owner is unavailable right now. I could create an account for you if you'd like." Dad: "Look, I need to buy $70,000 of prep materials, and I need them by next week. Please try again to find our account. This construction company is one of your top clients, and if you ask me to create a new account, I will go elsewhere." Lady, still not trying again, says, "I apologize for the inconvenience. If you feel that you could get better service elsewhere, then you are free to do so." My dad immediately hung up fuming. He had to take 2 more days and $10,000 more, but he got the parts on time. He then came into the office a week later, passed by the front desk, and knocked on the owner's door. "Sir, you can't go back there." Wouldn't you know, it was the lady from before. My dad just waited, and when the owner opened the door, he greeted Dad like an old friend. After explaining the situation, the owner immediately called the lady in, calmly went off on her, and showed her exactly how to find the construction company in the future. My dad isn't someone to get people fired, better to humiliate them into competence. The owner then called corporate, who authorized a 10% discount on piping as an apology. This contract had a piping budget of $9 million, so that discount went straight to profits. As a stockholder, that goes to my dad's pockets as well. He's never had a problem before, nor since. Want some free gas? I got you, bro. So, several years ago, my friend, we'll call him Boris, and I would always help each other do the spring cleanup for our properties. This included taking out damaged trees, preparing garden plots, or taking care of our weed-infested yards. I was going to be first on the cleanup detail, so I prepared tools and implements the Friday before the big cleanup was to happen, sharpening tools and chainsaw chains, lawnmower blade, and just getting everything in order. Among those tasks was mixing gas with 2-cycle oil, finished up kind of late, and generally put things away for the next day. The next morning, Boris shows up with coffee and biscuits around 8 a.m. As we were sitting on his tailgate enjoying breakfast, my neighbors ride by in their beat-up Chevy Cavalier, smoking like a freight train. We will call them Rocky and Bullwinkle. Boris and I made the usual jokes about the amount of smoke pouring from the exhaust. Darn, bet they go to the gas station and fill up with oil and check the gas. We soon finished breakfast and thought no more about it. As we begin to get the tools laid out and lay out an attack plan, I cannot find my gas cans. No mixed gas, regular gas, or gas cans in general. That's when it dawned on us why the car Rocky and Bullwinkle were driving was smoking so bad. I'm upset, to say the least. Well, all Boris and I could do was go shopping for gas cans, gas, and more 2-cycle oil. After we returned, we saw Rocky and Bullwinkle pass by several times, but all in all, we got a lot done. The next weekend, we dedicated to clean up at Boris's. A weekend or two go by, and we have a family dinner at my wife's and Rocky and Bullwinkle's grandparents'. Towards the latter part of the evening, we were having a few drinks. Most people had left, and myself and wife's grandfather were shooting the breeze when I had to go to the bathroom. As I was doing so, I saw a gas can with a very distinct paint on it. I inquired from the old man about how it came into his possession, and he stated Rocky and Bullwinkle left it there. I simply explained it was mine, as was another, and loaded them in my truck. It got to me every time that crappy car with my post neighbors went by. So I hatched a plan from a rotten egg. I went and bought a few gallons of gas, a few gallons of diesel fuel, and some other various oils. I made a concoction of these different chemicals and filled my new 6-gallon gas can I had purchased. With some clean gas, I filled the lawnmower and cut some grass that evening, making sure Rocky and Bullwinkle saw me. Then I put everything away, but forgot and left that rotten egg gas can out. I got up and went to work the next morning and didn't even think to check on the can. But when I got home, I checked and it was gone. My wife informed me that my plan must have worked as she watched Rocky and Bullwinkle go in and out with the car not only smoking, but spitting and sputtering as well. The last time they rode out, they didn't ride back in. They gave me about an hour of peace before they came over and wanted to know if I could look at their car and see what was wrong. If it could not be fixed on the side of the road, maybe tow it home. My response? I've had a long day and I have a migraine. Maybe tomorrow. I saw the panic set in when I told them that. That's when they told me they had no insurance and it was on a main road. Tough luck. So the highway patrol did run across it and it was towed. It was going to cost them around $500 to get it out of impound, plus they had to have current registration and insurance. Car wasn't worth it. Well, they're the type of people that good luck just falls on them, and the pastor for a local church gave them an old Ford Taurus. Took me a few cans of rotten egg gas, but I got the motor to lock up after about a month. This time it quit in their grandparents' yard, so they scrapped it, and as luck would have it, they got their income tax returns. They bought a nice-looking Ford F-150, but it began having problems too. Smoked really bad. They did take it to a mechanic that eventually found the problem. He got the truck running right again for about $1,500, and I've never had any more gas come up missing. Thanks for reading. Wait, so first it was Rocky and Bullwinkle were the neighbors, but then it was them at the grandparents' house. Brother-in-law? Cousins? Made-up story? OP. They're my wife's cousins. Am I the jerk for giving my mother a house on the condition that my brother and his family do not come live with her? I'm 45, female. My mother is 76, and she's a very simple person. My father abandoned us when the youngest was 6 months old, and my mother was never the same mentally. I have a good financial condition. I try to help as much as I can with the groceries and bills, but it's very complicated because my mother refuses to come live with me and remains in the terrible house that my father gave her in the divorce. My brother, my sister-in-law, and their 3 kids, who are 13, 9, and 5, live in the house at the back. And the house was tiny with a big yard, but brother built his house in the back and made the house even smaller. And he uses my mom as a free babysitter to take care of the kids he had, not to mention the dogs he adopted and never paid for their food. And several times, their kids go to eat at my mother's house. Keep in mind that my mother receives a low salary in retirement that is only really enough for her to support herself. I've been saving money for more than a decade to buy her a house, and I finally got it. It's a simple house with a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, with a big yard and a perfect garden for her. I talked to her, and she agreed with me that it would be better for the house to be in my name because I know my brothers and what they are capable of at any given opportunity, but it would have a lifetime clause for her only. I warned her that I didn't want my brother to move in with her, but in return, she wouldn't have to worry about bills and food anymore, as I would help. She looked relieved. I told my brother, at her request, she was next to me, and he said it would be difficult to accommodate everyone, but eventually he would expand the house to house everyone. I saw the despair on my mother's face, so I just made it very clear that the house was for my mother and not for them. He started to say yes, but he could help with the bills and food, and that his and his mother's house was too bad for a family of 5. I said no, that mother accepted the gift knowing that he wouldn't live there and that due to their history, I wouldn't trust him to pay the bills. He doesn't pay my mother, and I wouldn't be paying for 5 people. He started calling me selfish and saying this was a jerk to give on condition, knowing how bad my mom's house is and that she obviously has no other option to accept. He said I was purposely harming him and posing as a monster he is not. My mom is more relieved to get out of the house, but my brothers are calling me a jerk, even more so because the house is in my name. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You're saving your mom from your mooch of a brother, and he's just being spiteful because you're doing so in a way that he cannot exploit. Not the jerk. However, if you haven't already, you should consider consulting an attorney to have a plan to enforce keeping your brother out of your mother's house. I should say your house because you're the owner, fortunately. That way, if he tries to step over the line and invade her space, your property, you can take action. And make sure you let him know you have consulted a lawyer and there will be consequences if he does anything improper. Am I the jerk for telling my sister there is nothing that would ever make me ask her to be a bridesmaid? This involves me, 24 female, and my sister who's 23. We were really close for 10 years. I loved having a sibling so close in age. Sometimes I felt like my parents babied her more than was fair, but her and I were cool. She was a friend and not just my sister, and I would have done anything to protect and defend her. We both got busier for a while, and it was after the business started that I noticed I would get into trouble a lot more, and it never made sense. I was told I was leaving my sister behind, that I needed to learn not to be mean. My parents would talk about seeing me do stuff I had never done. I was so confused. Then one night, I had been at a friend's house and just got home. When I went upstairs, I heard talking downstairs, went down, and heard my sister say that I had told her we could play together, but had ditched her for my friend instead and never even told her. The next morning, Dad told me he remembered me promising my sister to play with her and how I never followed through and that was not a good big sister move. I told him I never promised that, but he shut me down. This continued for months. She would say I had said something that I didn't, or that I was mean to her, that I let her be bullied, that I was pushing her away all the time and breaking promises. None of this was true. I was busier with school and extracurricular stuff, but we still spent time together. It wasn't as much though, but we couldn't have spent the same time together. I told her to stop. She told me there was no way because I didn't get to ditch her for my friends or that she should have gotten all my spare time. I told her it wasn't fair and she had friends too. Our relationship turned bitter on my part afterward. I stopped loving her. We would fight anywhere and everywhere. Eventually it built up, and when I was 17 and she was 16, she went to our high school principal and said I had cheated on a test and that I told her at home. My parents were called and I was investigated. Even though the school cleared me, my parents still believed it, and I missed out on a great opportunity because of the allegations were still being investigated. I never forgave her for that. A couple of times after we both moved out, she told extended family members about all the bullying I subjected her to. It further reinforced my dislike of her. Now I'm getting married. I asked my two closest friends to be my bridesmaids. My sister found out about this and told me I should have asked her and told me she wanted to do it. I told her there was nothing in the world that would make me ask her, and I would sooner have no bridesmaid than have her as one. She called me a jerk, and now I'm getting hassle for my family too. My parents have also tried, but they're not even getting an invite because I blame them for believing all this and not putting a stop to it. But I worry I crossed a line. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Password everything so no messing with the wedding. Good point. Maybe even hire security in case she and the parents decide to crash the wedding or reception. Not the jerk, OP. Why would she think she'd be a bridesmaid or a maid of honor when you're not even inviting your parents? That's just weird. Not the jerk. They crossed a line, not you. When you want someone to be your bridesmaid, it's because she's important to you. Usually that's a sister if you have one, because of what they mean to you. You don't feel this way about your sister. Furthermore, she did you wrong in so many ways and doesn't seem to feel sorry. So you would be right not to invite her at all. Same goes for your parents. My 15-year-old niece keeps giving me a snobby attitude. It's going to be a very long 2 weeks. My niece is staying with me until September 18th because her parents left for their vacation yesterday. She flew in from San Diego yesterday morning and it's been nothing but heck. I live in Colorado, by the way. She keeps nonstop complaining about how cold it is here, as if I have any control of the weather. When she first got to my house, she said, "Do I really have to stay in this?" before even entering. I live in a townhouse. She was upset there is no pool and was like, "Why don't you have a pool? I know you're poor, but everyone should have a pool." My car isn't as nice as her parents' cars, and she keeps complaining how run down it is and is scared it's going to fall apart. I drive a 2016 Honda Accord. There's nothing wrong with it. It's kept clean. Her dad drives an Audi, and her stepmom drives a Maserati. She also keeps making videos around my house, laughing at all of my furniture, the way the house looks, my car, etc. She asked if I got my furniture at IKEA, because it looks cheap, and she laughed. She's complaining because there's carpet throughout the house, and only poor people have that, and that the bathrooms have tile floors and not marble, and that she has to shower in a tub shower with a shower curtain. At her house, it's a stand-up shower with marble walls, and there's a glass door. I don't have stand-up showers. She's also mad that there's no sauna in the bathroom. She said straight to my face, "I can't believe I have to stay in this crappy place until my parents get back," and then walked outside and slammed the door and was texting someone, probably her dad. She's very close to him. As of today, my guest bedroom already has stuff out everywhere. The blankets I originally had on the bed, along with the pillows, got thrown into the hallway and replaced with the ones she brought. She has clothes all over the floor. She has a few dishes with half-eaten food sitting on the floor. I told her yesterday no eating or drinking upstairs. She's using the dresser as a vanity and left all of her makeup and used makeup wipes out everywhere. She said if I want the room clean, I can do it myself or hire a maid, then laughed and said, "Oh wait, I forgot. You're too poor for that." I ordered takeout last night from a local restaurant, and she made fun of the menu because the prices were cheap. $25 for a burger is cheap? And she got the $80 filet mignon dinner and threw most of it out because it tasted weird and she wasn't that hungry. Her dad sent me $650 to feed her and take her to do whatever, so that came from that money. Yesterday, we went to eat at Outback Steakhouse for lunch, and she refused to eat any of her food. She said it looked weird. She said her dad would never take her to a dump like this restaurant. Then she kept complaining she was hungry after we left, and I'm a terrible person for making her starve and wasting her time by making her sit there. We also went furniture shopping because her dad wants to buy her a new bedroom set for her 16th birthday next month, along with her trip to Hawaii. She's being very picky, and he wanted me to check out the prices of places around here, see if she likes anything, and get back to him on it. He said she has a budget of $8,000 total for her bedroom. She wants either these upholstered princess bed frames or these mirror bed frames, which are pricey. It's around $3,000 to $5,000 for the ones she likes, and that's just for the bed frame by itself. She also wants a vanity, a bench, a nightstand, a chandelier, and a dresser with it, and they all have to match the bed. I tried showing her cheaper options, and she screamed at me in the store, "I have no taste, and that it's her bedroom furniture. Stay out of it." She told me to go back to the car and wait because I'm annoying her. I was about ready to leave her there, honestly. She then wanted to go clothes shopping and knows her dad sent me money. I said, "You can get an outfit," meaning one. You still need food from the grocery store. She was not happy about that and told me to stop being a cheap jerk with her dad's money. She was adamant about getting this one dress and a pair of heels that was $230. That's less money than she has to spend on groceries and other things. She knows this and still went with the purchase. She wanted me to buy food for her from Whole Foods and use some of my money if I run out of the money her dad gave me. I was going to buy her her own groceries because she's a very picky eater. I suggested a local grocery store because it's cheaper and she can get more food. She started yelling at me and calling me names, so we went home instead. She ignored me the rest of the car ride and was texting someone. She got out of the car and started crying, saying she misses her dad and she hates me. She hates my house, it's so embarrassing and trashy, and wishes she could be on vacation with her dad, and it's not fair she has to stay with me, and ran into the house crying. She keeps yelling at me to buzz off and stop talking to her, that I'm annoying, to go away, etc. when I say anything to her. I was eating a sandwich earlier, around almost 4 p.m., and she came downstairs and said, "Nice to see you feed your fat face while I starve. You're such a selfish jerk. You know that I hope you choke on it," and rolled her eyes and went back upstairs. I ordered pizza for dinner, and she started crying at the table that she misses her dad. I asked if she had called him and talked to him today, and she said in a rude tone, "What do you think?" and rolled her eyes. Then she was complaining about how gross the pizza was and got up and took the box and threw it in the garbage. She then told me to go to a gym and to lose weight, said that I'm disgusting and went outside. She also just took a super long shower and said she's going to keep doing it every day since it's so cold here, and if I don't like it, tough, because she doesn't like being cold or being here. She swore at me for not turning on the heat in the house. It's not cold enough to turn the heat on, in my opinion. I usually don't start doing that until the end of October, beginning of November, when the highs are only in the 50s. It's going to be a very long 2 weeks. She goes to a private school, and they are doing online school again this year. Her first day is September 7th, and she's already telling me that I can't force her to log in and do her schoolwork, that she doesn't care about it. She's right, I can't. But I don't want to be blamed for her being tardy. I know her dad will be pretty upset since he's paying for her to go there.
This girl needs to return to the shadows from whence she came.
My jealous Karen sister caused thousands of dollars of destruction at my house. I'm 22, female. I have 3-year-old twin boys, and I had a baby girl not even 2 days ago. My sister, Jody, is 34 and has been suffering with infertility for the past 10 years, as well as repeated miscarriages. I used to feel really bad for her and also a bit guilty, as I got pregnant twice while I wasn't even trying to. It caused some tension between us when I was pregnant with my twins because she was jealous, and I was already feeling intense guilt. This time around, she wasn't as jealous, but I still felt it was unfair. As my husband and I have decided we are done having kids, I offered to be a surrogate for my sister as soon as I'm cleared after this baby, and she seemed like she was absolutely over the moon with that. In turn, she offered to watch the twins while I was in labor with my new baby, which was a relief on my part. I went into labor on Thursday morning, and Jody came over to watch the kids while my husband and I went to the hospital. She seemed like she was in a great mood and promptly rushed us out the door. Everything seemed fine until we got home this morning to find thousands of dollars worth of destruction to pretty much every baby item we've purchased. Even the crib mattress was torn open. Everything was ruined. Jody tried to pin it on the twins, but they're 3, and this level of destruction had to have been done by an adult. My twins can't even reach some of the stuff that was destroyed, and they certainly do not know how to open diaper packages and tear them apart. I know kids, especially toddlers, can do a lot of damage in a short time, but I also know my kids aren't capable of what happened. I told my sister to get out of my home and stay away from me and my family. I got really angry, and I said a lot of stuff I shouldn't have, but one of them was, "I hope you never have a kid, and if you do, then I'll tell it exactly what you've done to mine." I told her we can't afford to fix the damage she's caused, but since she still denies it, she won't cough it up. I told her because of her, the baby doesn't even have a safe place to sleep. My parents caught wind of what I said, and even after I explained the situation, they still think I'm being a jerk for saying something so vile to my sister, after all she's done for us. Obviously, my judgment is clouded. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your sister flew into a jealous rage when faced with all the things she wants and doesn't have. Can you imagine how terrifying that was for your twins? OP, you need to file a police report for destruction of property and maybe even contact the authorities. Your sister is unwell and should not be allowed to provide care to your kids. You didn't know, but now you do. Never let your sister anywhere near you or them. Your sister needs mental health services, and she's not going to get them if your parents would rather pass the blame on to you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know.
I just want to know if while she was tearing everything up, she was like, "Ree, ree, ree."
Am I the jerk for calling the cops on my husband after he hid my son's motorcycle? I got my son a $7,000 motorcycle for his 18th birthday this past June. My son is obsessed with automobiles and loves motorcycles. In his room, he has plenty of models and posters of motorcycles of all types. His biological dad passed when he was just 12. Now I'm married to my current husband, and he has kids of his own. My husband has always been against my son's interest in motorcycles. He thinks I'm encouraging him to be reckless, distracting him from school and by extension his future, and spoiling him and blowing away money by spending $7,000 on a motorcycle. This caused some tension between him and my son, so I told him to stop complaining about it. Around 2 weeks ago, my son's motorcycle went missing. We opened a police report, but nothing came out of it. It just disappeared. My husband had a smirk on his face the entire time, just walking around saying, "I told you so, you just wasted your money." This was unbearable to hear, to be quite honest. My mother-in-law visited a few days ago. She was talking about the other house my husband owns and mentioned seeing a motorcycle, one that's similar to the one that we lost, in my husband's garage while she was cleaning it. She goes to clean that house weekly, even though it's empty. My husband plans on giving it to his kids as an inheritance. I was puzzled. I asked if she was certain, but she showed me a photo she took of it, which confirmed that it was indeed my son's motorcycle. I immediately rushed to call my husband and confront him about it. He admitted that he took and hid the motorcycle in his garage as a last resort after me and his stepson kept brushing him and his thoughts off about the $7,000 being spent on something unnecessary and that could cause issues. I blew up at him, demanding he return it. He refused and told me he had been considering selling it and giving the money back to me so I could use it wisely this time. I told him I was serious and that I'd call the police. He literally said, "This is a family matter and cops can't do anything about it." I'd had enough, so I called the cops as soon as I ended the call with them. The motorcycle was found and returned, but my husband had to be taken in since there was an open file about the motorcycle going missing. He was let go eventually, but he was livid with me. He came home yelling about how awful what I did was and how crazy my behavior was. I refused to engage in the argument, but he told his entire family about it, and they judged me for calling the police on my own husband, even though I already asked him to return it. He said he was just looking out for my son and that one day we'll realize that he was right, but only when it's too late. My son isn't speaking to me or my husband. I feel horrible about the whole situation, and I'm starting to think I handled this the wrong way. Not the jerk. The debate about whether a motorcycle is a good gift for an 18-year-old is irrelevant, completely red herring. Ignore any responses based on this. Your husband stole an item and he hid it, then allowed you to go to the police about it, smugly knowing they wouldn't turn up anything, and lied to you either overtly or by omission about it. When confronted, he doubled down. No remorse, no contrition. You were right to call him out. You were right to involve the police when he threatened to sell it against your wishes. And my recommendation would be to begin divorce proceedings, because this man does not have any respect for you whatsoever. He's already proven he will commit crimes and file false police reports in order to get his way. He's a walking rotten tomato. My mom was married to a walking rotten tomato when I was a kid and a teen who, among many other things, took the cell phone I paid for when I was in high school and purposely broke it because, "This is my house and I don't like your attitude." My mom just stood by and defended him like she always did. He comes off as a holier-than-thou, "I'm right and you're wrong" type that my ex-stepfather was. He's probably been the jerk to his stepson for years. He committed a crime, lied about it, let everyone believe and worry that it was stolen, admits he was going to commit a second crime had his mother not alerted OP that he had the motorcycle, and then he has the audacity to act like he's the victim and the wrong party here because he just can't stand not being right about and or controlling everything and everybody. He's mad because he got caught and thinks his being right and his perceived right to control his stepson's hobbies because he's the one that's right justify theft, manipulation, and lying. I don't blame OP's son for being done with the both of them. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Sweet older lady saves me from a Karen on the bus. My bus was delayed by 5 hours at a long-distance terminal in the middle of nowhere in rural Florida. I, a short, husky white teen, was dressed in a black button-up, red tie, and black pants with my eyeliner and mascara from the Rocky Horror Show I had attended before traveling, probably looking a bit worse for wear. I was sitting for a decent while when I noticed that an older, probably late 60s or early 70s, lady was trying to do something on a self-service kiosk and muttering to herself in Spanish. She seemed to be getting frustrated and was darting her eyes around for employees. But the place was packed with people due to the delays at around 3 a.m., so not many were around. Someone eventually did try to help her, but I heard "no hablo inglés," causing the person to just look kind of puzzled and walk off. I was in my 3rd semester of Spanish at the time, so I slowly walked over and said, "Excuse me, do you need some help?" She asked if I spoke Spanish, to which I replied that I was still learning, but I would do my best. She clapped her chest with a literal "Dios mío," and we pleasantly worked through what she needed done and went our separate ways. Someone had taken my seat, so I was just standing around for a minute or two when I get the tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see a large Karen with a ton of luggage and a kid in tow. The kid is nose deep into a DS and isn't really paying attention, but she looks me up and down with what appeared to be disgust before demanding that I get her luggage to wherever it has to go. I had no idea where that is and was honestly super exhausted, so I start to say, I'm sorry, but I don't work. Before I can finish, she butts in with,
Don't you mess with me. This place is going crazy, and every other employee is busy. So even an office guy or supervisor or whatever you are should be out here helping with customers. I saw you help that other lady, so you can darn well help me with my bags.
I raised my hands and started to explain again that I didn't know anything and that I don't work here. But she was not having it and started to raise her voice a bit. At this point, her kid notices her volume, looks up at me with what seemed like a mixture of confusion and embarrassment, then tugs on her shirt and says, Mom, I don't think he… She turns quickly and gives him a tss. Not even a shush, just like that loud click hiss noise that dog whisperer guy used on TV. Then she started in on me for being lazy and unprofessional or whatever. Just then, the elderly lady comes up from the side of us, shaking her cane at the large woman and shouts in the best English she could muster, You leave my nephew alone. He's a good boy. The big woman turned to see this little old lady with straight up lightning in her eyes and the big bit of mahogany inches away from her face, then just turns around and leaves with her kid. No apology, nothing. Once her and her kid are a fair distance away, I thank the older woman, and she just motions for me to follow her. We go outside to a bench by the entrance, and she offers me a cigarette as she lights one up. I say, no thank you. She then pulls a thermos out of her purse and offers me some coffee. I once again say, no thank you, but she pours it anyway and comments about how the coffee here is so terrible. Turns out she was visiting from Guatemala to see her son who works with a company that imports, blends, and roasts Guatemalan coffee. We're both coffee snobs, so we just sit and chat about coffee, our families, and why on earth I'm dressed like I am until her bus is called to board. I, of course, offer to help with her luggage, but she says she only has the one small bag and is fine with carrying it. Definitely an interesting capstone to a very interesting weekend. Anger management therapist throws temper tantrum over $2 or $3. I thought this couple would be my last table. It was late and the rest of the section had emptied. But then I was told I'd be getting a 12 to 14 top, and then another. My section was the only place to put them, so much for going home. The couple seemed to be done, so I wanted to get them paid and off my mind. After they declined dessert, I dropped their check off and resumed setting up for my 2 large parties. As I'm stressfully trying to get things moving with one of the parties, the guy from the couple is waving me over to their table. Please don't order anything else, just pay and leave. He's irate and starts arguing with me over the price of their drinks. One of them is discounted because it's on the late night happy hour menu, but the other is not. I tried explaining this to him, but he keeps insisting that if I've discounted one, then I should discount the other. I don't discount the drinks myself. The prices are set in the computer. He's getting more and more annoyed as he's flipping through our drink menu, intent on finding something to support his argument. He turns to the page with a list of drinks that have late-night discounts, and I immediately point to that page. Here, this lists which drinks are… He slams the menu closed on my finger and continues ranting, now about how I should have told him that one of their drinks wasn't discounted, even though they never asked about happy hour discounts. At this point, I've had enough. I had already pulled my finger out of the menu he slammed closed, and I said, I'm going to find a manager to explain it to you. Then turned and walked towards the kitchen. He hollered,
Where are you going? Why are you walking away?
Dude, I just told you that I was going to get a manager to explain it to you. I was starting to get irate myself, since he was wasting my time when I needed to take care of the 2 large parties. I explained to my manager that he was crying about not getting a happy hour discount on a non-happy hour drink, that he just wanted to argue with me, and then when I pointed at the page with the list of happy hour drinks, he slammed the book closed on my finger. Oh, and he yelled,
Where are you going?
After I told him I was going to get a manager. I apologized for having to waste her time with this nonsense as she walked over to deal with him. He told my manager that I lost my temper with him and that his girlfriend/date went to wait in the car because she was scared. Scared? He added that he's a therapist, that his office was just up the street, and that she should consider sending me to him for some mandatory counseling. No, I did not lose my temper. And your date did not leave because she was scared. She left because your little temper tantrum over the price of a drink, maybe a $2 or $3 difference, was embarrassing her. After he left, did he leave her his business card, or did I just remember his name from his credit card? We looked up his business and got a huge laugh out of it. It didn't list his qualifications, even if he has any, and most of his Google and Yelp reviews trashed him. Most were sent from people who had been referred from traffic court. The last time I was sent to traffic court, they provided a list of qualified traffic schools to attend, so somehow this clown got on one of those lists. Reviews included people saying he doesn't know what he's doing. He often tells people they have to pay cash because the credit card reader is down that day, i.e. tax fraud. He's not paying taxes on that day's income. And he makes people write positive reviews about what they've learned and accomplished in exchange for their completion documents. What a joke. Am I the jerk for making my stepdaughter feel bad for eating all of my snacks and drinks? My stepdaughter is 10. I'm 30, female, and I have diabetes, as well as other food allergies that prevent me from eating a very large variety of foods that are purchased for consumption in this household. The food and snacks and drinks that I can eat usually tend to be on the more expensive side, and I have to spend way too much time shopping around for bargains so I can actually eat. My stepdaughter is fully aware that these are the only things I can eat, and we had no problems up until roughly 6 months ago. I've been in her life for 8 years, so yes, this is a new behavior. So my favorite food and drink is burritos and Diet Sprite. I can't have either of them due to my allergies, and it took me forever to find a brand that I could actually have. But due to the fact that both of these products are way too expensive, $19 for an 8-pack of burritos and $12 for a 6-pack of the Sprite knockoff, I don't get them often at all. Maybe once every 3 months or so. I caught my stepdaughter eating and drinking both of them multiple times and had to sit her down and tell her that I don't want her eating those, as they were expensive and for me specifically, and I offered to buy her the regular brand of the same items. She said yes, so I went out and bought them for her, just to find that she was still eating mine and not even touching hers. I asked her why several times, and she shrugged her shoulders and walks off or says, "I don't see why it's a big deal, it's just food," and rolls her eyes. So I told my husband to do something about it, because he knows my dietary restrictions very well and knows how important not only that is, but also how much I love those specific items and can't have them often. He speaks to her, everything after that seems fine. However, I just bought the burritos and knockoff organic Sprite again yesterday. I went to go get myself some around 10 p.m. when my stepdaughter was supposed to be in bed. The entire liter was gone. I couldn't find it anywhere. So I go into my stepdaughter's room and she's sitting with not only the Sprite in her lap, but 2 burritos as well. This is when I noticed everything else. My green tea sitting on the floor, gone. My meal containers that I had packed for work under her bed and on her dresser. I thought I was going mental because I couldn't find them anywhere, and turns out that she's been eating them. I've gone many days at work without food because of this. So I told her I had never been so absolutely disappointed and repulsed that someone could lack that much respect and empathy for another individual, and walked out. I woke up my husband. He went down and saw everything, but came up and started screaming at me because apparently I made his kid cry, and now he's worried about her developing anxiety about eating. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk, but this is family therapy time, not am I the jerk time. Something is up with a 10-year-old hoarding food, especially just your food. No need to put up with it, but sounds like you need a therapist to work with her. 100%. Something more is going on here and the internet can't parse it. Get her individual and family therapy. Am I the jerk for giving my stepdaughter the best room out of all of our kids? My husband, 43 male, and I, 38 female, are moving into our dream house. We have 4 kids. My stepdaughter, Ella, who's 16, our daughter, Jane, who's 11, our son, Sam, who's 9, and our daughter, Luna, who's 6. It's a 6-bedroom home with a master, our bedroom of course, 2 rooms with attached bathrooms, and 3 normal bedrooms. The plan was for one of the rooms with the bathroom attached to be a guest room and the other to be Ella's room. Jane, Sam, and Luna would each get one of the normal rooms. We told the kids to decide their room themes or decor styles so that we could decorate them and move in. Jane was under the impression that she and Ella would be getting the 2 rooms with the bathrooms. We let her know one of those would be the guest room And since Ella is the oldest, she deserves the other one, so she can have the privacy and space that she needs. Jane thinks this is unfair. She tried to convince us to give her the guest bedroom, but we feel that guests should have the comfort of their own bathroom. There's also a bathroom right by Jane's room that will be hers that she can decorate however she wants to, and it can be her own bathroom. It's just not attached. Sam and Luna will share a bathroom. She then brought up that Ella is only here every other week, so the room is just sitting there for days at a time. We said that did not matter, and she still deserves the room because of her age, and when she leaves for school, college, they can switch. Jane has not been handling this well, and a few family members she's spoken to think I'm putting someone else's kid over my own. But I've been raising Ella since she was a baby. Jane has struggled with some jealousy over Ella's 2 birthday parties and some other things she gets double of. Her mom is high conflict, so we all have minimal contact with her and do things separately. I'm torn. Jane and Ella usually get along great, and her jealousy hasn't gotten this bad before. Are we handling this all wrong? Am I the jerk? Edit. To clarify, Jane still has her own bathroom and she can decorate it however she wants to, that no one else will be using, it's just not attached to her room. Her issue is she wants it to be attached to her room. She still has a walk-in closet and lots of space. Her bathroom is right next to her room and nobody else will use it. The 2 younger kids will have to share a bathroom. Ella leaves for college in less than 2 years and will then switch rooms with Jane. She will have her own room with an attached bathroom when she's 13, just in time for her teenage years. We do have guests often, especially in the summer. That's not super rare and hypothetical. Info. We have guests often, including their grandparents who have a hard time getting around sometimes. They come by pretty frequently to hang out with the kids and take care of the younger kids. Edit 2. Jane is also 11. She does not need an en-suite bathroom more than an adult guest. I do not want to raise brats and feel that if she cannot accept a private bathroom that's not attached to her room for 2 years until her sister moves out, maybe she doesn't deserve the en-suite in the first place. But I do agree with some people under here who have stated it's more than the room, and I have addressed that with her and put her in therapy to work through her blended family feelings. She loves Ella. They get along great. She just gets jealous sometimes because Ella gets 2 birthdays, 2 celebration dinners if she achieves something, 2 Christmases, etc. We try to do extra things with her to balance it out, but there's still a level of understanding she's going to have that'll come with maturing. That Ella's life is a lot more complicated, and she deals with a lot when it comes to her mother and living split between 2 homes. The double celebrations are one perk to a tough, messy situation for Ella. I'm absolutely mind-boggled by the number of people upset that the oldest kid gets the better room. That's the way my family and every family's home I've ever visited sets things up. Then when the oldest kid leaves, the next oldest gets the room. That's perfectly fair, and it's disgusting the number of people who are saying the 16-year-old doesn't deserve the big room because she's not related to OP by blood. This is a fair system, not the jerk. Well, what do you think? Would you handle the situation the same way OP is or not? Please let us know.
Never give in to the demands of brats. That's how you create Karens.
My entitled mother showed her real self, and now no one loves her anymore. Now you all know from my last post that my mother tried to act like she's in charge of my life, and also acted like my house was hers to give away. Well, that ended very badly for both her and my spoiled sister, because I threatened to expose them. And that whole incident inspired me to get cameras for my house, inside and outside. My dad was old school. He didn't care for cameras at home. Heck, he didn't even care for TV, save some occasional movie. He mostly enjoyed his scotch with a cigarette and a good book. But now I own this house, and cameras were a very needed upgrade. And just in case, my girlfriend and I didn't tell anybody outside of our close friend circle about them. And those that do know were sworn to secrecy and kept their word. A couple of weeks had gone by without any word from my mother or sister, other than what I was seeing on my sister's social media. She was constantly complaining about having to live in our mother's basement, and I'm pretty sure she was making our mother miserable for it. But what came next surprised me. I got a frantic phone call from my sister saying that her boyfriend was questioning whether or not he was the father of her pregnancy, and he was threatening to leave without a paternity test. My sister swore up and down to me that she's always been faithful to him. I admit, I believed there was a chance she could be lying, because our mother's own past affair made our father question our paternity as well. but I suggested they get the DNA test done. But my sister just babbled about how they don't have a lot of money. I offered to pay for it so long as she didn't come to me asking for money or favors often. She quickly agreed. I arranged for the test and even shelled out extra to make sure we got the results ASAP, but it would still take a few days. I hadn't yet met my sister's boyfriend, but when I did, I started to understand a bit more. He's half Hispanic, and my mother, though not open about it, is not okay with this. It's something she got from my grandparents, sadly. I decided to try and talk to the guy and took him out for a beer, and while at the pub, he spilled his guts to me. He said that my mother had been whispering in his ear about how my sister is just like her, and she had cheated before, so my sister might have as well. This made him have doubts that grew every day, and he said he wasn't sure my sister didn't cheat or get pregnant on purpose to try and baby trap him so she won't have to work any more than she already does with her little part-time online sales job. Sadly, I knew he was probably right about the latter. But other than that, he's described her as a completely different person when she's not around our mother. But ever since they've been living in Mom's basement, she's become more and more like a child. After what I saw at my house, I wholeheartedly believed him. So I asked if he suggested she get therapy. He admitted he's wanted to, but didn't have the money, and had been walking on eggshells around her and our mother for a while, so he never talked about it. Well, I guess that made some brotherly instincts I didn't know I still had kick in, because I started to realize if I was going to have a niece or a nephew, I couldn't let them live with or be raised by my mother. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I told him that if the DNA results came back positive, I'd offer him a job and training at the company I now own. He quickly agreed because he doesn't want to live with my mother any more than he has to. Well, the day of the DNA test results coming in the mail came pretty fast, but my sister called me saying they weren't in the mail she'd gotten that day. I asked who got the mail from the P.O. box, and she answered it was our mother. That pretty much confirmed my theory she was trying to force out my sister's boyfriend. But since I don't and never really have trusted my mother, with my sister's consent, I preemptively got the clinic to send me a copy of the DNA results to my address as well. And they did come in the mail that same day. I called my mother and asked if she had taken the DNA test results. The following conversation is more or less what I recall since it wasn't recorded. Me: hello, Mom. I heard that Sis's DNA test didn't come in the mail today. Mom:
Oh, yes, but it could be here soon.
Me: did you take it? I know it arrived today as I paid to have it set as priority mail.
What? How dare you accuse me of such a thing? I would never.
Me: okay then, I guess I'll just bring over the backup copy that was sent to me. Mom:
Backup copy?
Me: yeah, I had one sent to me as well the same day since I paid for it. Sis gave her okay and everything. I guess I'll just call her then and we'll meet up. Mom:
Wait, that's not
Click. I hung up the phone and called my sister right away. I picked up my sister and her boyfriend from my mother's house and drove to a local diner restaurant. And there we opened the envelope together. Sure enough, the test results were positive. My sister's boyfriend was so happy that he actually asked her if she would marry him, and she said yes, like a half dozen times. The little vindictive part of me was just waiting to see my mother's face when she got the news. But what happened next honestly shocked me. When I took my sister back home, her and boyfriend's stuff was in the process of being put out onto the lawn by a few men we didn't recognize. My sister froze with a look on her face I'd never seen before. Our mother came huffing outside in a rage while holding the DNA test results she claimed never arrived and began verbally losing it on my sister.
How could you make a baby with him? I thought your dating him was just a stupid phase, but now you're gonna have a baby and marry him? I would have been sort of okay with having his little jerk around if you weren't raising it in my home and he wasn't around anymore.
Sister:
but Mommy,
No buts, young lady. I demand you not have that baby or leave my house at once.
Then she turned to me while snapping her fingers and said,
And you. I hope you're proud of yourself. I tried to make this family normal, but you wouldn't do as I say, like a good son should. And now all of my plans are ruined. You're all a bunch of blanks.
Meanwhile, my sister was on her knees in the grass and holding her belly crying. I can't. My mother then actually grabbed her, and was poised ready to take a swing at her. But one good glare from me and she froze in place and then rigidly lowered her arm. So she just let out a loud growl and stormed back into her house screaming,
"She's your problem now, Craggle. I no longer have any kids."
That night, I put up my sister and her boyfriend in a hotel until a friend of my lawyer that works in real estate helped arrange an apartment for them ASAP. And like I promised, I gave my sister's boyfriend a job. He's new and pretty much starting at the bottom rung, but he's a quick learner. It'll take a while, but I'll get him into a good position, and he's very happy to work for me. My sister is now in therapy, paid for by my company's insurance, and has already started to act more mature than I've ever seen her. She stopped referring to our mother as mommy and has even started talking about her the way I do. She came to me recently and said she's working harder now and told me I was right about her being a spoiled mooch, and she's gonna work hard to be a good mother and a provider for her kid. Her therapist seems to really be doing a great job. As for my mother, well, she actually drove up to my house in broad daylight when no one was home and broke several of my front windows with large rocks she had in a metal bucket. And the rocks had bad words written all over them. But thanks to those cameras I put in, she was caught pretty easily. I had the footage in the police hands that same day. I didn't bother to ask for repayment for the damages she caused. The windows were old anyway, and it just gave me an excuse to remodel. But I did press charges and even got a restraining order. She's not allowed within 500 feet of me or my property. She also took quite the downfall online, as I had a dash cam in my car that picked up everything my mother said and did that evening she kicked my sister out. And this time, I did show it to the rest of the family. And my sister also told pretty much the same story on her Facebook that pretty much destroyed my mother's remaining image to her side of the family. So she's not really speaking much to any of them anymore. My mother didn't lose her job or anything because I didn't go that far. She's not set to retire for another decade or so, but some of her more petty relatives started submitting fake bad reviews for her Airbnb, and now she's probably losing customers. I've heard from one of the few relatives she's still talking to that she's pretty much depressed and looks like a shell of her former self now. Edit. Thank you all for the awards, kind strangers. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and my sister does as well. My brother's ex is demanding child support but refuses to take a paternity test. My brother Drew unfortunately passed a month ago. Since his late teens, he was engaging in all sorts of destructive things, and it tore our family apart. We tried rehab, therapy, support groups, and interventions, but nothing was working. A week ago, a girl, Zara, got in touch with my parents online, claiming to be pregnant with Drew's baby. My parents got too overwhelmed to talk to her, so I messaged her from my own account to continue the conversation. I already recognized Zara. She was Drew's ex-girlfriend from high school. Zara said she just found out she was around 10 weeks pregnant and that she was really struggling for money and could become homeless very soon, and asked me or my parents if we could help her out. After doing my research, I told Zara that she needs to do a paternity test first. Even though Drew is gone, the test can be done with our dad's DNA. I said I'd pay for the paternity test. Zara got offended and upset and said she thinks I'm horrible for calling her a liar. She sent me a voice message of her crying, which I thought was a bit out of the blue. I told Zara she can either take the test or not, but we aren't giving her any financial help until she takes the test. Zara left me on red. I told some of my friends about the situation, and they think I could have been more understanding and kind to Zara. You're the jerk. I bet a girl who's pregnant and whose baby's father just passed got emotional when the people who acknowledged she had a relationship with him call her a gold digger. Anyway, you should get the paternity test done, but include your mother and your father so it's more conclusive. And just in case your mom is also a liar and/or a cheater. Your dad's DNA doesn't mean anything if your mom was out getting with other people. Info. Are you requiring a pre-birth paternity test? There are risks with such tests that can jeopardize the pregnancy. I would refuse to have one because of that risk. Paternity tests, or in fact any other unnecessary tests, can wait until after the birth in my mind. So I'd say you're the jerk if you insist she takes this risk. Afterwards, it's all game. Her not wanting to take it doesn't mean she's lying, in my opinion. It's very possible she's still grieving, and this could be a trigger. But you aren't a jerk for asking. Obviously, if she isn't in a grieving state, then it's not the jerk. But if he and her were close and such, then no jerks here for now. You're the jerk. Let's check the facts. There's a young pregnant woman who is asking for help, has reached out to you, and you assume she's lying and are demanding proof? Guess you've never heard of human decency. Caring for those who need some help. You honestly sound like a monster, and you should consider taking some classes on kindness. You're the same type of person who will complain about having to pay my college debt without even considering the fact that my degree I had to get loans for is completely useless. So now I'm still slaving away at Walmart, and you expect me to pay back my loans myself? Laughing out loud, dream on. Now that I don't have to worry about my college debt, I can spend so much more on important things that actually improve my life, like makeup and extensions. A girl's gotta look good. You really suck, and I would never give a dude like you a chance to be with me. Have fun being alone the rest of your life, because us girls don't want guys who have no heart, unless you're really good looking, but I'm sure you're not.
Reddit boy, do people like this really exist, like in real life?
Unfortunately, they do, Karen. Unfortunately, they do. My sister is demanding I walk down the aisle at her wedding with a girl who ghosted me 2 years ago. The title is weird. So is this whole situation I, 27 male, find myself in. I do think the backstory is important here. So my sister is getting married in November. We are really close and always have been. So I find this whole situation to be even weirder. I've been asked to be a groomsman on her fiance's side. Me and him are cool, and it was important to my sister that I'm included. I was really looking forward to it until I saw who I was paired with. So 2 years ago, I met this girl named Tara, who's 26, female, on a dating app. We started talking daily, FaceTimed a lot, went on dates, we talked for over 3 months, and I felt like it was actually going somewhere. Well, after one of the dates, she completely ghosted me, sent a follow-up text, but got nothing back. I won't lie, I was really upset. I even talked to my sister about it. Well, lockdown hit, and I moved away for a job. Come back to find out my sister and Tara are now friends. Apparently, my sister got a new job. Tara recognized the last name, reached out to her, and they became friends. Such good friends, in fact, that she is now a bridesmaid and hangs out at my parents' house, and my parents know her. I found out they were friends literally 3 weeks ago. She never mentioned it to me. I asked if she knew it was the Tara I got ghosted by, and she said Tara had told her, but wanted to keep their conversations private. Then a random text from Tara, asking what I wanted to do for our entrance dance. I immediately called my sister, who informed me that Tara and I would be paired up, including the entrance dance. I asked why. I know many of her bridesmaids, and she had to pair me with the one who ghosted me? She said she had her reasons, and Tara also asked for me specifically. I never responded to Tara, and instead went to talk to my sister in person. Got the same answers, and this time she sounded offended that I asked for a different person. I told her how uncomfortable it made me, and she told me to stop overthinking and just have fun. I said she didn't understand how hurt I was. She said she had an idea, but to just do it as her wedding gift. I told her I'd be stepping down from the wedding party. I'll just go as a guest. She went crazy, saying I couldn't do that, and she wanted me up there. I said, fine then, switch me to someone different. She said she wasn't going to, so I told her I'd be dropping out. My parents are calling me a jerk, but I don't think I am. It's a weird request, and I'm not about it. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. They may be trying to set you guys back up, but why would you want to when not one person is willing to openly clear the air about what happened? Instead, they try to force you two together without explanation and expect you to put aside your own feelings and self-respect to accommodate this, which is unnecessary in the first place. And while you're gone, she gets close to your sister and parents. What a weird scenario, which could be easily explainable until you factor in the subterfuge, gaslighting, secrecy, manipulation, and family pressure. What a weird situation. Like they all know something you don't about something that directly affected you. And rather than help you get clarity, they all run cover for her. OP. It is really bizarre. Like, Tara is very charming. Maybe she's just charmed my sister and parents. I really don't understand what is happening. My sister is typically my biggest supporter. It feels like I'm in the upside down. What's obvious is that she's trying to, probably at Tara's request, set you two up again. A bit more speculative might be that Tara ghosting you the first time was a manipulative, playing hard to get tactic that backfired. Alternatively, and similarly speculative, the ghosting itself wasn't a tactic, but if she's charming, like you say, She may not be used to people not being desperate to get in touch with her and is trying to validate that by proving that she can get you now. In any case though, not the jerk. This is weird and inappropriate. If you want, and since you say you're close with your sister, sit her down and have a proper serious conversation and give her one last chance to come clean and act sane. More than likely, Tara wasn't just seeing OP at the time, and things took off with another relationship. That eventually fizzled, and now OP is a failsafe. If they keep this up, maybe not going to the wedding altogether is the best thing to do, because they will ambush you at the wedding trying to pair you up with Tara. Not the jerk, but Tara sounds like some real bad news. She already is turning your family against you. Why would you let someone like this into your life willingly? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or everyone else? Please let us know.
If you're seeing someone and you decide you don't want to anymore, just be upfront about it and they will appreciate your honesty. Ghosting someone who thinks you may have a future together is not a nice thing to do.
Wow, Karen, sounds like you have some experience in the field of being ghosted.
Stop it, Reddit boy! Just stop it!
Am I the jerk for hosting a fundraiser for a teen whose parents left her homeless? Her parents are now furious. My youngest daughter is a senior in high school. One of her best friends, Lily, just turned 18 as the school year was starting, and her parents kicked her out of the house that same day. My daughter told me she was sleeping on different friends' couches and talking about dropping out to work a job. So my family took her in so she could finish school. I just can't imagine a parent kicking their kid out like that. So after we did that, my daughter and Lily decided to have a community barbecue/bake sale to fundraise for some money to cover food and housing expenses. It wasn't anything I ever asked for, but the girls wanted to do something to contribute for groceries and bills. The girls made flyers and little promos for social media, and they were pretty straightforward about what was going on. They said, community barbecue/fundraiser for Lily, and a note from Lily saying, very cute. And a note from Lily saying, as you may know, my parents kicked me out of the house and cut off any financial support on my 18th birthday, leaving me homeless with no money or car. The Smiths gave me a home, expecting nothing in return except that I stay in school and graduate. I wanted to do something to give back and pay my own way. Anyway, I shared that on social media, and so did the girls and a lot of their friends at school. The barbecue was a huge success. Almost all of our neighbors came by, and so many kids from my daughter's school, and a lot of our family and family friends. The girls ended up raising several $1,000s, which I ended up putting in an education fund for Lily, where I'm also putting stuff like the cash she gives me from her job for groceries and stuff like that. I'm planning on surprising her with it closer to graduation. Anyway, Lily's parents are irate. They saw that I posted the flyer on the community Facebook page, and most everyone in town saw it. I got a call from her dad screaming into the phone at me for slandering their family online, which I felt was such BS. I told him to either stop this and act like a parent is supposed to, or lose my number. He started yelling on the phone again, so I hung up and blocked his number. Then I got a bunch of calls from another number. It was Lily's mom, getting angry at me about how I don't know what she and her husband have been through, and it was trashy of me to be begging the whole town for money for myself and acting like it was their fault. I was like, well, it was your fault. And she got so angry and said that she and her husband had given their daughter everything and she was ungrateful, which I feel is BS because they ain't even giving her a roof over her head. Am I the jerk for letting my daughter and her friend who was kicked out at 18 host a fundraiser that was very blunt that it was to raise money after her family kicked her out? Edit. I want to give a massive thank you for everyone in the comments who gave us advice, whether it's legal advice, resources for getting financial assistance for education, school, community resources, etc. Not the jerk. Frankly, that's just a bad thing for a parent to do. If they didn't want to be slandered, maybe don't kick your kid out the instant they become an adult. Edit. As many people have pointed out, it isn't actually slander against the parents if it's true. I used slander for lack of a better term, so for that, I apologize. Not the jerk. They're just annoyed they've been called out for their bad behavior, and now everyone knows about their crappy parenting. They're ashamed and angry that they've been exposed, but they're putting the blame on you instead of reflecting on their own issues. Not the jerk. Imagine kicking your high schooler out of the house and then getting upset at people trying to help her out. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or those parents? Please let us know. Mom tells her kid she can get anything she wants in this store, then gets mad when she doesn't pick out what she wants her to. One evening, while I was working by myself at the store I used to work at, a family comes in. It's a mom and a dad with their 2 daughters, one who looks between 10 and 12, and the other looks like she's around 7. As they're coming in, the parents tell the girls they can pick out one item in the store. They look around, and the youngest one becomes interested in a small keychain makeup palette that's shaped like a flip phone. Kid makeup and not real makeup. Want to clear that up. Her mom goes into the clearance section and finds another makeup palette that's much bigger and has a lot more product than the one the girl wants. Since the bigger one is in the clearance section, they're roughly the same price. The mom tries to talk her into getting the bigger one, but the girl still wants to get the phone one. Yes, getting the clearance one is more practical, but that one isn't cute like the other one, and that's really all that a kid that age cares about. The mom starts getting frustrated, and I get why. If you're spending money on crap quality kid eyeshadow, you at least want to get a lot of the stuff. I can't remember how much the palettes were, but I think it was around $10 to $15, and nobody wants to spend that much on a little bit of makeup with a nice looking case. However, they did tell the kid she could get anything. From what I saw, no rules, no budget, no limits. And the way I see it, if you're going to give a kid that kind of absolute freedom, you need to accept that she's going to get something fun and impractical. The older girl decided she's going to get something at the next store they go to, and the parents seem like they're more than ready to leave. The girl isn't picking anything else or agreeing to get the big makeup palette. She just wants the phone. After a little more trying to convince her, the mom just tells the girl she isn't getting her phone and tells her that if she doesn't get the big makeup palette, she isn't buying her anything. And the mom's getting pretty angry with her. She asks her one more time if she wants the clearance one, and when the girl says no, she says, "Okay, we're leaving." The girl gets really upset. Just before the family leaves, the mom says, "I'm not buying something for you that you're going to lose." The worst part of working in a kid-centric store, which I was at the time, is listening to parents scold or argue with their kids. It's always awkward, and you have to pretend you can't hear or see it. Also, if she was worried about the kid losing it, we do have bags. She could also just put it in her purse. There are ways to avoid that, just saying. I understand not wanting to buy useless things for your kid, especially if it's something breakable, like basically everything we sold in that store. But I just don't think it's fair to tell a kid you'll get them anything they want, then get mad at them for not wanting what you want them to, then refuse to buy them anything. Am I the jerk for not paying for my stepbrother and sister-in-law's expenses after kicking them out? I, 29 female, was hosting a party for my mom and stepdad's wedding anniversary. I flew out my 3 step-siblings and their partners to all spend the week in my city, and then on the weekend we would have the party. I, and my husband, live in a pretty small flat, so there wasn't enough room for everyone to stay. So we offered for my stepbrother Mark and his partner Fran to stay on our yacht for the week. No one in our family likes Fran because she can't keep her opinions to herself, and she's always no general etiquette. So the week went on with Fran making out-of-pocket comments about our city and lifestyle, which was expected but still annoying. One night, me and my husband were attending a party, and I didn't really fancy inviting Fran and Mark, but we did, and obviously everything was fine. We didn't see them for most of the evening. We invited a few people back to our yacht for an after-party, and of course, Mark and Fran were there. Fran was quite intoxicated and started again making inappropriate comments that were making people feel a bit awkward. One of our friends was telling a story about how he did something funny that incurred a fine. Fran got upset and said how the fine he had paid was more than most people make in a year, and he should be ashamed to be happy to throw that much money around. She said she was sad to see the amount of money being spent in our city and how ungrateful and wasteful we all are. Cue awkward silence. I jokingly said that next time Fran should take herself camping because I didn't spend the money to fly her out here, treat her to dinners and parties and yachts for her to be sad, and everyone laughed and moved on. Eventually, everyone left and we went to bed. The next morning, I told Mark and Fran that I was humiliated and horrified by her behavior, and I wouldn't have people being disrespectful to me while staying on my property. Of course, they were still welcome to come to the party and the flights home were taken care of, but they couldn't stay on the yacht until the party. I probably would have relented if there had been genuine remorse from them, but Fran doubled down on her attitude and I had had it. After a brief argument, they left and went to stay in a hotel. The party went off without a hitch. We were all keeping the peace for parents' sake. A few days after they had gone home, they sent me a bill for their hotel stay, saying that since I'd kicked them off the yacht, I should pay for their expenses. I sent them a response telling them where they could put their bill. This made the rounds, and my parents are now asking that I pay the bill, as it was a lot of money for them and not for me. And they came on holiday with the expectation that they wouldn't have to budget for accommodation. I said they wouldn't have had to if they'd had an ounce of decency, and that I won't be paying, but my parents are begging me to, so that it doesn't impact Mark and Fran financially. Am I the jerk? Edit. Since this is a point of contention, yes, we did ask Mark and Fran if they were okay with the after party. Mark in particular was a fan of someone coming to the after party, so was very enthusiastic about it, and Fran said yes also. Had they wanted to go to bed, we'd have gone elsewhere. Not the jerk. Actions have consequences. If Mark and Fran had financial concerns, Fran should have kept her mouth shut. They put themselves in a position to incur extra costs, and it doesn't make sense for you to pay for costs they incurred. Am I the jerk for throwing out my stepsister after her foster kid's behavior? I, 30 female, invited my dad to visit me and my husband for a week as we live abroad. He brought his wife, who asked if her daughter Linda could come as well. I don't know Linda very well, as our parents got together when we were already adults, but she's always seemed fine, as does her husband James, so I said okay. Linda notified us that she would be bringing her foster kid. Let's call her Sophie, who's 12. I didn't think this would be a problem, but I was wrong. Sophie was incredibly hyper from the minute she stepped in the house. She would interrupt conversations and demand attention. Linda did nothing about her behavior. The first few days were long and arduous, with Sophie complaining about every activity and meal without fail and dictating the running order of everything because if she didn't get her own way, she would have tantrums like a toddler. She also damaged some art supplies I let her borrow to paint with and damaged the desk in my husband's study. We were all fed up, but felt sorry enough for Linda and James having to put up with it all the time that we didn't say anything. She also developed what I consider a weird fixation with my husband. She would demand to sit next to him at restaurants or at home, ask to hold his hand when crossing roads, and just generally latched onto him. The final straw was when we were all eating dinner at my apartment before me, my husband, James, and Linda were going out for the evening, and the parents would watch Sophie. Sophie was whining that she wasn't allowed to come with us. Sophie finished her food and left the table, and 2 minutes later, we hear something smash. We all run to the lounge to see a very expensive ornament has smashed on the floor, and Sophie is standing there looking smug. She said it was an accident, but none of us believed her. Linda offered to pay for the damage until she found out the cost and had the decency to be mortified and apologetic, but I had had it. I told her to pack up the kid and go. She might be committed to this, but I didn't commit to property damage and having my life run by a kid. Linda and James pleaded that Sophie was just feeling upset and insecure, but I had had enough of cutting slack to everyone involved. Eventually, they left to stay in a hotel. My dad's wife was beside herself and said I should have had more compassion for what Sophie is going through, meeting new people and traveling for the first time, etc. And maybe some of her attitude can be explained by that. It's not the majority. While my dad is on my side about not wanting her around, he said it was too much to throw them out immediately. But I don't see why I should have to put up with destruction in my own home and foot the bill for the privilege. What was the kid going to destroy next? Am I missing something here? Am I the jerk? Not the jerk, but neither is Sophie, yet. I don't know what kind of past she's had, but ultimately, the fault here lies in her enablers, your stepmom and sister. This kid needs to be in therapy, and she needs boundaries and consequences. She cannot be allowed to act like this. 12 is old enough to understand and be better. Given the complete lack of control, you were totally justified in asking them to leave. Am I the jerk for turning away a friend after he showed up to my birthday dinner without RSVPing? I had a birthday dinner this weekend. A week before the dinner, I sent a mass text out to 8 of my friends telling them the location, date, and time, and to let me know by a certain date if they are coming so I can make a reservation at a hibachi place. Most people said they could come. One friend said they couldn't make it, and another friend never responded. A couple days later, I was talking to one of the friends I invited about the dinner, and they said they thought the friend who didn't answer was coming, but they weren't sure. I said that he needs to RSVP so I have the correct head count for the reservation. I never heard from the friend who didn't respond, so I made the reservation accordingly. I should add that before I made the reservation, I texted in the mass text chain with "Last chance to RSVP. I'm making the reservation at this time today." The day of my dinner, the friend who didn't respond showed up right as the hostess was asking for the name of the reservation. I told her that we had an extra person show up and I apologized. She looked to see if she could place all of us, but was unable to find a place to accommodate an extra person without us having to wait 2 hours. So I told the friend who didn't RSVP that they could not join us for the dinner. He got mad and told me I was a bad friend. He told me it was embarrassing to be turned away from a birthday party and that he wasted time and gas coming out. I told him he should have RSVP'd. He told me he told our friend that he might be going. I said that wasn't good enough and he should have told me himself. He told me that I should have asked him if he was coming. Am I the jerk? Edit. For those stating I should have assumed he was coming because another friend said he might be, I don't work off of hearsay. Especially since the friend who said this is known for saying lots of things that don't turn out to be true or turn out to not happen. I never take what they say seriously. Not the jerk. You asked people to RSVP. He didn't. You didn't include him in the reservation. End of story. Telling another friend he might be coming is not an adequate RSVP, or actually not an RSVP at all. The time my employees got mad at me for firing a rude waitress. This happened a couple years ago, but I randomly was thinking about it and thought you guys might get a kick out of the ridiculousness. I had this employee who was a woman in her late 30s or early 40s and was your stereotypical mom bee. I'm a good deal younger than her, and at the time, I was like 26 or 27. Right away, it became clear that she had an issue answering to a woman much younger than her. She talked back a lot and made it clear she felt like she knew more than me and shouldn't have to listen to me when she disagreed. She would frequently bring up the fact I had no kids and she had 4 to disregard my management abilities as if it was in any way relevant. Here's just a couple anecdotes of what I regularly dealt with from her. We had a problem with employees being on their phones excessively, her being one of the worst offenders. I did an employee meeting where I reminded everyone they weren't allowed to be on their phones at all, and we would be a lot more strict about that moving forward. She interrupted my speech to say,
Well, the problem is your generation can't handle being off their phones for more than 2 minutes.
I pointed out that she was on her phone all the time too, and her reply was,
It's different. When I'm on my phone, I'm looking at things for my kids, not trying to hook up on Tinder or play Candy Crush.
I told her the reason people were on their phones didn't matter unless it was an actual emergency, and she rolled her eyes. She tried to argue with me about the fact I would only schedule her during the day and not nights. Nights are more lucrative because customers buy more alcohol drinks, thus higher tips. I reminded her that when she took the job, she was signing up specifically for day shifts, and most of my waitresses are college students and have class during the day, so there's not any flexibility with their scheduling requirements. She proceeded to yell at me that her desires should trump theirs because she's a mom and she needs more money than them, and slammed my office door shut behind her when I wouldn't cave. The final straw was that I heard from one of the waitresses, who I'm very close to, about how she would talk about how she didn't respect me as a manager and often brought up my lack of desire for kids. She would also apparently say things like,
I'm not going to take orders from someone who hasn't even matured past the I don't want kids phase.
Between the constant blatant disrespect and the fact she was barely a passable waitress anyway, I decided to fire her. 2 waitresses confronted me, telling me it was wrong of me to fire her and begged me to give her job back. They had no defense for her crappiness, only she has 4 kids. If she has 4 kids dependent on her, it's on her that she repeatedly treated her boss like total crap. It's not like I fired her over one incident. There were countless instances of horrid behavior and blatant disregard for authority that she openly and shamelessly stated was rooted in ageism and my maternal status. So yeah, it's a shame that her kids had to suffer for their mom's behavior, but that's her responsibility, and I have no regrets for throwing out the trash. Because I didn't want to eat glass-flavored sushi? This is a slightly older story, and while I remember a few pretty specific lines that my friend and I still joke about, most of this is generally paraphrased. Back when I was graduating high school, my mom informed me that my graduation gift was going to be a trip to Disney and that my best friend, Bella, could come too. So keep in mind, Bella was 18 and I turned 18 the next month. We spent most of our time in the Epcot showcase, usually Japan. We had the pass to skip around from park to park and opted to eat in Epcot, Japan nearly every day. Since we had the meal plan package, we had been given a few snack options to use through the week. Honestly, the food we would eat during the meals was so much food that we never really used any of the snack during the majority of the week. So we hatched a plan the last week to use the remainder of our snack options on sushi and pastries from Epcot, France after we got lunch at our usual spot. We popped into the small eatery in Epcot, Japan and picked a table near the front. We had started to eat when entitled Dad, okay-ish wife, and their 2 kids came in and flocked to the table next to us. The kids don't play a huge part since one was pretty much a toddler in a stroller and the other couldn't have been older than like maybe 5. They sit down and grab a high chair for the toddler. Entitled Dad then tried to wrestle with this massive mech of a stroller. I think he was trying to fold it down smaller and was getting stressed, so he's fiddling and yanking at random sections of it. Well, his annoyance clearly takes over and jerks what I think was the handle of the stroller back. He doesn't quite manage this well and ends up launching his hand back from the momentum. This was enough to punch a hole straight through the paper lantern light above the table. Now, this may not have been a massive problem had there not been a very clear sound of glass shattering. The poor lantern was hanging loop-sided from a thread. The family collectively stared at the lantern for a few moments before they quickly packed up their kids and moved to a table on the other side of the small eatery. Bella and I sat there in disbelief, staring at the light fixture that looked like it would fall over any second. We thought over telling someone, thinking maybe the family would do it, but once they hunkered down to eat, we lost all faith in that. The tables were close enough at this time that if it fell, it would either come down directly on us, or if we were lucky, fall to the other side of the table. Either way, it would be a glass mess that someone would have to clean up. A lady working there walked by us, and we briefly stopped her, quietly pointed to the lantern, and saying we saw someone accidentally break it. I specifically did not point the family out. She looked stunned, thanked us, shuffled away, set one of those wet floor signs at the table to have people avoid sitting there, and we saw her start a conversation with someone on the other side of the food service counter. We felt good about that, went back to eating, and everything was great. Only, no, not really. This story wouldn't be here if that's how it went. I see Bella make a confused face while looking at something behind me, so I look behind me, only to be looking up at Entitled Dad from my seat. Entitled Dad:
"Why in the world did you think that was your business?"
Bella and I just stared at him, confused for a minute. Neither of us was really sure what to say to a complete stranger. This is when he decided to pronounce it out, word by word, like we were stupid.
"Why in the world do you think that was your business?"
Me: I heard you the first time. It's not like I mentioned you're the one who did it. I thought that maybe this is what he was concerned about, since maybe he thought he may need to pay for it or something. Entitled Dad:
"That's not what I asked you. Why in the world do you think that was your business?"
Nee, looking around confused. I didn't want it to fall on someone?
"Still not what I asked. How was this your business?"
I was a bit confused how that didn't answer his question, and we just had a few seconds of staring competition before it just dawned on me that he was just crazy. Nee: because I don't want to eat glass-flavored sushi?
"You should have just ignored it. It wasn't your problem."
At this point, I was over being yelled at by some dude I didn't know, with a weird need to act like he's my dad. Nee: I know you think you can say whatever you want to us because you're 1,000 years old and you think everyone is younger than you. But man, you broke it and ran away. The only person you should be mad at is yourself because you can't use your adult words to talk to a server about something that you broke. And instead, you need to yell at someone less than half your age to feel like you control the situation. Super paraphrased here, but I did hit on these points to some degree. I just don't remember the exact words. I could tell he was winding up to yell back when OK Wife stepped in, calling him back to the table. He turned around to argue with her, and at this point, we just decided to yeet out. No management or police, but yikes, that was a weird moment. All good though. We ate so much sushi and pastries that night, we couldn't manage dinner later. My Karen neighbor reported me to the HOA for having a wood-burning fireplace. I, 25 male, own a lakeside property that was legally and officially given to me by my parents. I've been living here for 6 years, and I have some great neighbors along with some not-so-great ones. Out of all my neighbors, I've only ever had problems with one who lives right next door, named Mariette. She first moved in early this summer as she had the former house on her property demolished and rebuilt. My problem started with her over the use of my wood stove in fireplaces. With the temperatures getting colder, I've started to use them daily. My house is not equipped with any form of heating outside of the wood stove and a fireplace. This means that from fall until spring, I will constantly have them going to keep my place warm. My family never outfitted the home with anything better because it was for weekend trips, and we would winterize and leave it when things got cold. My parents thought of adding oil heating when I moved in. However, I was opposed to it because it was a waste of money, and I didn't mind splitting logs. 5 days ago, after having received my shipment of logs for the fall, I was approached by my neighbor Mariette. She came around asking for my parents, to which I said that they don't live here and that I am the homeowner. She didn't believe me and said that I was too young to be a homeowner before leaving. Later that day, I heard a knock at my door and thought it was my girlfriend, so I gave my usual greeting of, "Hey, sweet cheeks," while opening the door. Unfortunately, it was not her, and it was Mariette again. So I apologized quickly and asked what she wanted. Once again, she wanted to speak with my parents, to which, in a more stern tone, I said that I was the homeowner. This time, she finally got it and said that I'm violating HOA policy by using wood-burning fireplaces indoors and outdoors. In response, I said that as new as the house looks, I'm not a member of the group and that the town permits fireplaces and burning yard waste. She then went on to ask why I even needed them because they do nothing but harm the environment. I went on to explain that while the house exterior looks new, the house actually has been around since 1930 and still uses a wood stove and fireplace heating. She didn't believe me yet again and said she would be back with an inspector. Yesterday, once again she came with another person who introduced themselves as the HOA inspector. They tried to talk about my fireplaces, but I shut them down immediately and said that I'm not a member of their group. The guy then tried to lie by saying that the HOA is in control of all the properties in the area. I immediately called him out on the lie and said that he's either lazy or a moron for not knowing that I am not with them. We went back and forth one more time before I told them I will not listen to them and to stuff it and leave. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If this continues, inform the HOA that if they continue to harass you, you have no issues looking into legal counsel. Also, let your neighbor know that she's not allowed on your property, and if she comes over, she's trespassing. I would tell the HOA the same as the neighbor. They're not to step foot on your property or you will involve the police. In my state, I think it's best to send that in writing by certified mail and keep the proof they received it so there isn't any question when you call the police. Not the jerk. Sounds like she's going to be a real pain. As much as I hate to say it, it's time to lawyer up, or you're going to be harassed by her and the HOA. Have you ever lived somewhere with an HOA? If so, what did you think of them? Please let us know.
I prefer living somewhere with no HOA, but I also prefer living somewhere with no neighbors. People kind of suck.
Am I the jerk for reporting my daughter's car missing after her stepbrother took it without permission? I got my daughter, who's 17, a new car 2 months ago. Her stepbrother, who's 19, has gone crazy about it ever since and has been attempting to drive it, but my daughter made it clear she doesn't want him to. He'd refer to it as our car and would get mad when my daughter decorates it with pink and adds teddy bears and necklaces as decoration. He'd get angry and say that she was ruining their car and embarrassing him in front of his friends, although she never let him get inside of it. I asked my husband to talk to his son, but he said that my daughter and I need to chill. Fast forward to this past Friday. My daughter called me at work saying her stepbrother took her car while she was upstairs after he demanded the keys and she refused. I called his phone, but he didn't respond. I called my husband and I told him what happened. I told him that he needed to go bring the car back or I'd have to call the police. He called his son, then called me back, saying his son was just taking it to go to the movies with his friends and will bring it back at 9 p.m. I couldn't wait. I warned him one more time to bring it back, but he stalled. I called the police and reported it stolen. My stepson was picked up from his location and brought into the local police station. We got the car back, but it was a mess. The decorations and toys in it were gone. My daughter didn't stop crying about it. My husband blew up at me on the phone for calling the police on his son and causing him to spend the night there. They both came home the next day and a huge argument ensued with my husband saying I made a mistake reporting the car missing and said that I escalated this situation and that I was the one who created it and I should have gotten his son a similar car or at least told my daughter to share hers. Otherwise, we wouldn't be dealing with his son's temper tantrums. The house has been full of tension since then and everyone is just mad at each other. I didn't want police involvement, but seeing my daughter cry, I just couldn't take it. This is weird. For the simple act of reporting the car stolen when it was in fact stolen, not the jerk. For marrying and subjecting yourself, and more importantly your daughter, to the environment created by your husband and stepson, you're the jerk. Get a divorce and get them as far away from your daughter as possible. Not the jerk. You told your husband to get the car back or you'd call the police. He and his son ignored you. You called the police. No one should be surprised. Why doesn't your husband buy his son a car? It sounds like your finances are separated. Does the kid work, go to school, do anything responsible with his life? Man, he's 19. He's a legal adult and he stole from his minor step-sibling. Man needs to man up and figure out this tantrum crap isn't going to blow over so easily. And now he's on the hook for legal consequences because he is, in fact, a legal adult. I can't imagine being 19 and so jealous of a high school junior I stole their car and threw their teddy bears away. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for calling the cops on him or not? Please let us know.
Dude sounds like he's got more issues than Nintendo Power.
Neighbor kept parking on my property, so I had him towed. Backstory. I'm a single mother of 2 teenage boys, and I live in a nice, quiet neighborhood at the end of a cul-de-sac. Every house on this street has a garage, and I'm the only one that has a single car and parks in my garage. Almost every house on this street is a family home with at least 3 cars, but most have more. Some will park in their driveway, and some will park on the street. It's never been a problem since everyone is considerate on how they park, and no one has ever had an issue with getting in and out of the street. In addition, I tend to keep to myself. I'm not antisocial, and I wave and say hello to my neighbors when I come and go from my home, but usually when I get home, I stay home. So I say all of this to give you an idea that I'm a homebody, and my neighbors pretty much know that when I get home, I stay home. About 6 months ago, the house to my right was sold to a larger family that consisted of dad, mom, and 3 teenagers. The day they started moving in, I made a point to go over to the edge of the property to wave and greet them in order to welcome them to the neighborhood. They were friendly, and I was happy to have such nice people to move in next door. Also note, the dad used their garage for storage and thus parked their 4 cars in the driveway. I didn't know it at the time, but their youngest son was just months away from his 16th birthday. Now that you have a little information, onto the story. The players. We've got me. We've got entitled neighbor dad. We've got the entitled neighbor son. And we've got the entitled neighbor mom. And we've got the poor, nice police officer. Today is Monday afternoon, and this story began last Tuesday. Around 6 p.m. on Tuesday, I received a knock on the door, and it was neighbor dad. Following is our conversation. Neighbor dad.
Good morning, how are you?
Me, talking through the screen door. We're okay. I'm sorry I can't open the door, but my youngest came home from school with a sore throat today, and so I'm not sure what's going on with him. How are you, and how can I help? Neighbor dad.
I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it isn't anything serious. We're okay. My son just turned 16 a few weeks ago, and I'm sure you saw the new truck we bought him.
Me. Yes, I did. It's such a pretty truck and big. Does he like it?
Yes, he does. It's what he wanted, so we got it for him. It is very big. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about.
Let's take a brief pause here and understand that when I say this truck is very big, it is very big. It's an F-350. I personally think it's too much of a vehicle for a kid learning to drive, but it's not my money, so to each their own. Me. I don't understand. Neighbor dad.
We've been having complaints from some of the other neighbors that his truck is so big that they can't get around it when they are driving through, and we're afraid that it might get sideswiped if he continues to park it in the street.
Me. Yeah, I've had some intense moments trying to get around it myself, but I'm sure he will get better at parking as he gets more experienced. I'm not sure what this has to do with me. I haven't complained.
Oh, I know you haven't complained, which is why I was going to ask if he could use your driveway to park, since you don't use it.
Me, very stunned at this. I do use my driveway when I leave and come home. I can't get to my garage without using my driveway. Besides, I have issues with depth perception, and your son's truck is so big, it will take up most of my driveway, and I don't want to be responsible for any damage that might happen while it's on my property. Neighbor dad.
Well, we will make sure that he parks it in a way that allows you to come and go without any issues.
Me. That isn't possible. The only way he can park to allow me to get around him is if he parks halfway on my lawn, and that wouldn't work because then he would damage my lawn. If you're concerned about his truck getting damaged, then why don't you let him park in your driveway
and then one of your other smaller cars can park in the street. We've already discussed that, and we would have to park 2 cars in the street in order for him to use the driveway. It would be very easy for him to park in your driveway, and I can assure you that it will not be an inconvenience to you. You don't even use your driveway.
Me. I'm sorry, but the answer is no. I'm not going to be responsible for his vehicle on my property, and I need to be able to come and go without worrying about someone else's property. Neighbor Dad, very upset at this point.
You are not being very neighborly. I thought you were a nice neighbor. You don't use your driveway, and this would benefit the whole neighborhood.
Nee, losing my temper at this point. Listen, I told you no, and I do use my driveway every time I pull into my garage and every time I leave. I'm sorry you don't have enough parking for all of your vehicles. I'm sure it's frustrating, but it's not my problem that you decided to buy a vehicle that didn't fit at your property. Now, while I also find it irritating to try and navigate the road with that truck in the way, it is public parking, and so I deal with it. I will not have anyone else's vehicle parking on my property. Now, if you don't mind, I have a sick kid and need to go get back to him. Have a good day. With that, I closed the door and then looked out the peephole and saw him give me the bird before he turned to leave. I just shook my head and had to take a moment to understand that I actually just had that conversation. I then loaded my son up in the car and left to take him to minor emergency to get him checked out. All tests came back negative, and I was told he probably just had something run-of-the-mill, and to keep him home and do self-care. Was told to bring him in if it got worse, but not to worry. I went to work the next day and told my coworkers the story of my neighbor's request, and they were shocked. I had one coworker suggest that I send an email to my HOA to explain what happened, just to get it on record because it was such an odd request. I took her advice and typed up an email that day when I was at lunch and sent it. For those who want to know, it was just an FYI email, not a complaint email. It basically stated that my neighbor made a request to park on my property, and when I declined, he got mad at me, and I wanted it on record just in case anything ever happens. So very glad I did. So Friday comes, and my youngest son has been homesick since Tuesday afternoon. When I got home Friday evening, I checked him, and he had begun to run a fever and was complaining of several other things. I had been doing self-care with him since Tuesday, and he didn't appear to be getting any better. Around 7 p.m., I decided to take him back to minor emergency and loaded him up into the car. I opened my garage door, and I was absolutely shocked to see that very big F-350 sitting in my driveway, blocking me. I can't describe to you how angry I was to see that vehicle sitting there. Now, before anyone starts asking me how I didn't know it was in my driveway, it's because my street is very busy and cars are coming and going all the time. And unless someone knocks on my door, I don't bother watching every vehicle that drives up and down the street. The only window that can see my driveway are the ones in my kitchen, and I keep those curtains drawn and never look out of them. So I get out of my car and stomp over to my neighbor's house and bang on their door. Neighbor Mom answers the door, and this is the conversation. Neighbor Mom, irritated and kind of angry.
Can I help you? You are interrupting our dinner.
Me. Your son is parked in my driveway after I told your husband he couldn't. I need to take my son to minor emergency, and that truck is blocking me in. It's at this time that Neighbor Dad walks up behind Neighbor Mom and proceeds to talk. Neighbor Dad.
He isn't blocking you in. You can get around him.
Me. No, I can't. You need to move that truck, or I'm going to call the police and have a tow truck come over. I need to get my son to see a doctor. Neighbor Dad, turning to call for his son, and then turning back to me.
He's not blocking you, but I will have him move it.
Nee, it doesn't matter whether you believe he's blocking me or not. He's not allowed to park in my driveway. No one is allowed in my driveway. And if I find an unauthorized vehicle parked in my driveway again, I'm not going to bother knocking on your door. I'm going to have it towed. It was at this time I saw the son arrive at the door with his keys in his hand, and I turned to leave, and I head to my car to wait for him to move it, and I heard him call me that famous B word. I ignored him and headed to my car to watch as he got in, and after some effort, finally was able to back out of my driveway and parked his truck in the street a little way down the road. I was able to leave and take my son to minor emergency where, as we waited for several hours to be seen, I shot off another email to my HOA about what had just happened. I want to advise, the HOA had already responded the day before that they received my email, made a note of it, and advised my property was my own and I could give or deny access to it as I wish.
It was this email string that I responded to while waiting for my kid to be seen. Again, all tests administered to my son came back negative, and I was told it was just something run-of-the-mill and that he would be fine. It just had to run its course. I took him home and called it a day. Saturday evening, my oldest started complaining of a sore throat, and I was starting to feel poorly myself. My youngest appeared to be getting better, so I figured that whatever he had, that we were getting. So we stayed in all day Saturday and Sunday. Sunday evening at about 5:30, my oldest son spiked a fever, and while it came down a little, it didn't come down enough. So I loaded him in the car and off to minor emergency we went. The only one I could find that was open on Sunday at this time was on the other side of town, so I had to drive 20 minutes just to get there, and we ended up waiting for 3 hours to just get in the door, and then another 45 minutes until we saw the doctor. After a few more hours and all of his tests coming back negative, the doctor did state that she could hear some wheezing in his lungs, and so she prescribed an inhaler for him to help him, but basically told me the same thing, that he has something run-of-the-mill and to let it run its course. I had to drive even further to the only 24-hour pharmacy available to pick up the inhaler, and we did not get back to my house until almost midnight. Let me set the scene for you. My son is half asleep in the passenger seat and complaining that he just wants to go home, and I am exhausted and feeling drained and having coughing fits myself, and I'm just looking forward to going to bed when I round the corner and saw that truck sitting in my driveway. I couldn't even pull in because he was blocking me, and I also noticed that he was parked partially on my lawn. I was so mad I could hardly see straight. I Googled and found a 24-hour tow truck service and explained that I had an unauthorized vehicle on my property that I needed towed. The woman said it would be about 30 minutes before they could get a truck there, and I said that was fine. In the meantime, I walked my kid to the house and put him to bed, and then quickly went outside and took a picture from the street to show how much of the driveway he was taking and that he was also parked on my lawn. I couldn't understand why they would park in my driveway again after I had told him no, and the only thing I could come up with is that since there had been no activity at my house for hours, that my neighbors probably assumed I was in for the night and wouldn't notice the truck in my driveway. This is pure speculation, but it's normal for me to be in for the night, especially after 6 p.m. I don't know if they missed me leaving or just saw me leave, but figured I was home. But it really doesn't matter because I told them they couldn't park in my property. It was about 12:30 a.m. when the tow truck arrived, and I half expected my neighbors to come running, but there wasn't any activity from them, and the driver left with the truck without incident. I went in, shot off another email to my HOA along with pictures and an explanation that I had towed the vehicle, and then went to bed. At 6 a.m. this morning, I woke up to someone banging loudly and rapidly on my door. I didn't have to look, I knew who it was. I grabbed my phone, hit the video record button. Before I opened the door, I looked through the peephole and saw a neighbor dad and his son at my door. I opened the door, and the following is the conversation. Neighbor dad, very angry and yelling, "Where is the truck?" Me, as calmly as I could state while coughing, "It was towed. You can call such and such company to make arrangements to get it back."
You didn't have the right to tow it. You're going to pay to get it back.
Me, I had every right to tow an unauthorized vehicle on my property. I told you not to park on my property, and you did it anyways. It blocked me from getting in my driveway last night. I told you I was going to have it towed after the last time you parked here without my permission, and I won't be paying anything to get it back. Neighbor dad,
You stole my truck, you jerk, and I'm calling the police. I'm going to sue you.
me, having enough of this. Go ahead. In the meantime, I'm sick, and I'm going back to bed. I closed the door and stood there for a moment. I looked at the peephole, and they were still there. Neighbor dad started banging and was also ringing my doorbell nonstop. He knocked and rang my doorbell for another 4 minutes before he gave up. I'm still recording all of this, and I didn't turn off the video when he was gone. I turned and saw my kids standing there. The noise had gotten them up, and I just advised that if they were still feeling ill, to just go back to bed because that was where I was going. Now, I will honestly say that I didn't think he would call the police, but he did. It was about a half hour. I really wasn't looking at the clock that I heard the doorbell ring. I got up and looked through the peephole, and a police officer was there. I opened the door and had the following conversation. Nice police officer. Good morning, ma'am. Sorry to bother you, but we had a report from your neighbor. He's stating that you stole his son's truck by having it towed from the street, and we need to talk to you about this issue. Me. Good morning, officer. My neighbor is only telling you half the story.
I had his truck towed this morning from my driveway when I returned home from minor emergency. I couldn't get into my driveway, and I've already told him twice that him and his family can't park on my property. This issue started last week, and I have emails to my HOA, pictures of his truck parked in my driveway this morning, and a video of my neighbor's visit this morning where he called me names and told me he was going to sue me and call the police. I can show you if you'd like. Officer: Yes. So you're saying that the truck in question was on your property without your permission and that you had it towed? Me: Yes. Last Tuesday, he asked if I would allow his son to park in my driveway. I told him no, and he got mad at me and flipped me off before leaving. Then Friday evening, when I was leaving, I discovered his son had parked in my driveway and I couldn't leave my garage. I went over and demanded they remove the vehicle, and I told them at that time that I would have the truck towed if they parked on my property again. I came home late this morning and the truck was in my driveway, so I had it towed. Officer: I just want to confirm, you're saying that it wasn't parked on the street, but in your driveway, and you have proof of this? Yes, sir. If you give me a minute, I will print off the emails that I sent to the HOA that documents the issues, and I will show you the pictures in the video as well. With this, the officer said that he would wait for me to print everything off. Once I got the emails printed, I then returned to the door, opened my Photos app to the officer to show him the truck in my driveway, time-stamped, handed my phone and printed emails to him. After looking at the photo, where you could clearly see my house in the background, the truck blocking the entrance, and that it was partially on the lawn, the officer then read the printouts. He handed my phone back to me and asked me to open the video that I had referenced while he went over the lawn to look. I watched him look at the area and then take a few photos. I could see my neighbor and his whole family standing in their driveway watching me and the officer. Officer returned and I handed him back my phone with the video ready and he watched it. After he finished the video, we had the following exchange. Officer: I'm going to need a copy of that photo and video for my file. If I provided you with an email, would you be able to send it to me? Yes, sir, no problem. I have enough information for my files to determine that the vehicle was not on public property and was in fact on your property. I've made a note that you did not give permission for the vehicle to be parked on your property. Based on the emails you gave me with dates and times, it appears you did in fact advise your neighbor not to park on your property. Would you like to file a trespassing report for this incident? Me: Oh, absolutely. Officer: I can see you're not feeling well. You can either file with me now or you can go online. Getting business card out, writing on it, and then handing it to me. Here's my business card with the email address that you need to use to send me the photo and video, and the case number is on the card as well. Do you want to file with me now? Me: Honestly, I'm exhausted and would prefer to file online later. Officer: Okay, reference this case number when you email your evidence and file the online report. Also, reference my name in the report. One more thing. I saw in the video where neighbor's dad stated he was going to sue you for having the truck towed. He can sue you if he wants, and I would advise that you keep all of the evidence you provided me with today, along with the case number I just gave you. Give it a few days, and you can request a copy of the report, and you will want to keep that as well. If you decide to file an online report, you will need to keep a copy of that as well. I'm going to go talk to neighbor dad now, and sorry to have bothered you. Me: Thank you, officer. I'm sorry you had to come out. Have a good day, ma'am. Get some rest. With that, I closed the door and went back to bed. However, I'm so mad that I didn't get any sleep. A few hours ago, I sent off my photo, video, and another copy of the HOA emails to the email address the officer gave me, and then saved all of that information just in case. I also filed a trespassing report online. I then sat down and started typing this story. Not sure where this is going to go, but I am going to see it through. I know that I'm going to get a lot of pushback from people saying that I should have just knocked on their door and had them move the truck, but I feel that I was right to have the truck towed. I had already told them twice not to park on my property, and it didn't stop, so this was the consequence. I will post an update later if there is anything that comes of my report, or if neighbor's dad does actually follow up on his threat to sue me. If you read all of that, thank you, and again, I'm sorry for the length. Update: OMG, this thing blew up and I'm just amazed. Thank you for the awards. I had posted this because I was second guessing myself and thought maybe I had let my sickness and anger outweigh my judgment, but your comments have made me feel secure with the decision I made. I have so many comments that I can't respond to everyone, so I wanted to address a few repeating comments that I saw. 1. This is a real story, and if you don't believe it, then that's on you. 2. Yes, I live in a quiet neighborhood,
and my specific road is busy. There are 12 houses on my street. Busy road doesn't mean noisy. I guess I caused confusion when I said I was at the end of the cul-de-sac. I'm the last house right before the cul-de-sac starts, so I consider myself at the end. Cul-de-sac doesn't mean no traffic. I still have neighbors and guests to drive by. 3. Cameras. I don't have any cameras, and I will have to save up to get some, and based on the comments, I will make that a priority. I have to budget to get extra stuff. My neighbor across the street has cameras, and I'm almost certain the front of my house is covered by them. There's no way they can cover the front of their property without getting the street and my front yard covered. This doesn't bother me, and when I'm feeling better, I will go ask them about the coverage. 4. I did take a look at my HOA paperwork, and it does mention that street parking is acceptable, but only if it doesn't impede traffic. I'm assuming that since some of the neighbors made a complaint about the truck, that the HOA must have said something to him, which is why he was trying to use my driveway. This is purely an assumption. 5. For those telling me I should have damaged the truck in some way, I just can't do that. Was it wrong for them to park on my property? Yes, but that doesn't mean I have to be like them. I'm satisfied with just towing the truck and the report I filed. If things don't escalate, then I will call it a win. If they do, then I will certainly respond. Don't misunderstand me, I'm not a pushover. I will not start anything or escalate anything unnecessarily. But if they escalate, I will stand my ground. 6. Yes, myself and my oldest are still sick, but getting better every day. My youngest was able to return to school this morning. Entitled Mom tried to have me sent to military school. It blew up in her face. After the last time I stood up to my mother, she seemed to get more wary of how she treated me. So I just continued with my usual routine of school and odd jobs. My 15th birthday was right around the corner, and my dad presented me with an engine kit for my bike to help me get around town in. He said I was better off saving for a car than a scooter, and this would do in the meantime. I ended up agreeing with his logic and kept saving for a car. A few days later though, I found a pamphlet for a military school while sweeping grass off the back patio and mowing the lawn. It was on the ground and under a chair near where my mom liked to sit and drink wine. I had a bad feeling she was cooking up some kind of crazy scheme, so I waited until my dad got home to show him what I'd found. He was pretty mad, but didn't jump to conclusions. So he went to see my mom with the pamphlet and asked her about it. Dad, honey, what's this? Mom goes white at the sight of the pamphlet.
It's nothing. I've never seen it before.
Dad, really? Because if you were planning on trying to send Craggle to military school, you know I wouldn't allow it. That's when Mom broke her facade and yelled,
He needs to learn some discipline. He locks his door all the time, and I can't even spank him anymore because he's too big. This is the only way I have left to punish him for being a disobedient brat.
Dad, Craggle did nothing wrong when he stood up to you because of your stupid favoritism. If anything, our daughter is the brat because of you and the way you spoil her and let her get away with stealing from her brother. And as far as I'm concerned, this discussion about sending Craggle to military school is over. And if you try to send him, then so help me, I'll bring the hammer down on you any way I can. Mom.
Well, I guess this whole family is just gonna take away what little power I have left in this house then. If I have nothing, I may as well be nothing.
Dad, you and I both know you'd rather keel over than be nothing. Stop being so dramatic that Craggle is growing up and is his own man now with his own money. Mom then stormed out of the room. The next morning before school, I saw her furiously trying to stuff something into the kitchen trash bin. I waited for her to leave for work and dug out whatever she was trying to hide. It was an application for the military school filled out entirely in her handwriting. It required the signature of both parents or legal guardians on it, and there were 2 signatures on the paper. I recognized Mom's, but the other looked like a pitiful attempt at trying to replicate Dad's. He prided himself on his smooth and complex signature, and there's no way my mom could copy it without looking like a fraud. I guess she realized that after she was confronted and gave up on trying to send me away. I kept the papers and showed them to my dad later. He was mad, but figured she had done that already and let it go. But he filed the papers in his office just in case. A few more months later, it got out that my mother was having an affair with an old ex-boyfriend of hers from high school. That was the last straw for my dad, and he filed for divorce, and I went to live with him months later after he bought another house. He sped up the divorce pretty quickly by pulling out the military school papers that my mom had forged his signature on. And it wasn't just that. He also had evidence she forged his signature on at least 1 credit card application.
And one other thing that I don't recall. That made Mom fear being arrested for fraud, and they went through court pretty fast because she agreed to most of his terms. Mom got the house because Dad didn't want it, but she also demanded alimony and child support because my sister, unsurprisingly, chose to stay living with her. The judge awarded my mom the child support and a minimum amount of alimony for a decade of monthly payments. The alimony basically just covered my sister's allowance anyway. Mom was pretty mad about that and threatened to take him back to court, but he held those forged signatures over her head for years to make her back down. On the day I left to live in Dad's new house, my sister stuck out her tongue at me and smugly said, Mommy told her that she was a princess and the more deserving sibling, and that's the reason why I was leaving the house. I just shook my head and told her to think what she wants because I didn't care anymore, then walked out the door, finally feeling free as a bird. My relationship with my sister when she came to visit Dad's house once a week only got worse after that, until finally we stopped talking altogether for years, and I didn't really care to visit Mom's house. She pretty much gutted my old room for a home office anyway.
My Karen sister refuses to help around the house, so I kicked her out. I'm female, and my sister Gina, who's 23, was left homeless after my parents cut off all financial support at the end of college. They warned her, and she didn't believe them. She was living at a friend's house until she found a job, but she decided that she would go after a master's degree that doesn't start until February. I live in the city that the master's degree is in. She asked me if I could help her for a few months until she started her master's degree. She couldn't help financially with the house or anything, but she said she would help as soon as possible. I don't have such a stable condition to support another person besides my son, who's 6, but I proposed that I would pay the bills alone as long as 1. She took care of my son from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., not on Sunday, and Saturday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., and 2. She cleaned the house every 3 days. Nothing too deep, just a sweep and dishwashing every day. That would save me money on babysitting and the cleaning lady who comes to my home twice a week. She didn't seem very satisfied, but that was my condition. I wouldn't support her totally like her friends do because I don't have the financial resources, and I'm only doing it because it's cheaper than hiring other people. My son likes to stay on his own, doing his own things that he likes. He just needs someone to keep an eye out for him and to make him lunch. After 2 weeks of her living here, me paying all of the bills and food, even the car which she uses a few times a week, she sat down and talked to me. Said that she accepted because of my condition, but that she was child-free for a reason, and that was precisely not having to take care of kids or to deal with them constantly. We argued about it, but I asked her to continue caring for him at least this week to give me time to hire someone else. That was on Wednesday. She agreed, and when it was Thursday, she called me saying she couldn't do it and for me to try to find someone else. I was irritated, and even more so when I saw a pile of yesterday's dirty dishes when I arrived. I told her that my condition to support her until December was for her to take care of my nephew and clean the house. She refuses to do either now, so I'm no longer interested in her staying at my home and me having more expenses, so it was better for her to move. She started saying that she would eventually pay for everything when possible and that I was using her by asking her to work without being paid properly. We argued, but I made my decision and I gave her 15 days to move. She's calling me the jerk. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I think your arrangement was fair to both sides. If she can't hold up her part, then you're not under any obligation to hold up yours. Not the jerk. I wouldn't have even given her 15 days, OP. That was nice of you. She wants to use you, but doesn't want to help in any way. Your conditions were fair, but that wasn't good enough for her, so she needs to go. Not the jerk. Is there a reason she can't work and earn money? People in graduate school, heck, even undergrad, usually work. You told her your reasonable conditions and she agreed. If she's backing out now, it's reasonable for you to give her notice to find her own place and a job. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their sister? Please let us know.
Her sister sounds almost as useless as you are, Reddit boy.
Am I the jerk for not letting my husband pull $14,000 out of my account without signing a contract? I, female 36, have been married to my husband, who's 42, for 2 years. I've never been married before him, but he was married twice and has 6 kids. He requested our finances to be split. Fine by me, because seeing how he blows through his money is so frustrating. He says he has kids, commitments, and has to provide, but I don't think that kids would need that much money to live like the other kids.
His bank account is almost always empty, whilst mine has over $20,000 in it. We take turns paying for daily expenses and stuff. Lately, he's been struggling with money. He borrowed from a number of people, including my own brother, about $4,000 from him just a week ago. He just seemed desperate for money. I asked what the deal was, and he said that he needed the money for the kids, which seemed fishy since kids don't really need that much money for their expenses. The eldest is 16. He came and asked to borrow $14,000 from me, pull it from my account and into his. I tried asking him what he needed the money for, but he said it was none of my business, then insisted that he'll return it ASAP. I said okay, but under the condition that he sign a contract stating he'll return the money in full. He acted all shocked and offended, then went on about how I don't trust him and his word. I told him that's all I got, and this was my one and only condition. He kept ranting about how I'm refusing to help and making the situation more difficult for him instead of cooperating. I insisted on a contract to be signed before he even pulls a penny, and this morning when I told him this one more time, he blew up and said that we're family and that I should be ashamed for involving courts and lawyers between family. He left the house and was so upset he hasn't responded to any of my calls yet. Am I the jerk for standing my ground with this condition? Update. So we talked after he got home, and when I tried pressing him to tell me what he needs the money for, he gave me the same attitude and said, I don't have to worry about it. I still stood by the condition I made, and he called me useless, then stormed off to spend the night with or at God knows who. Not the jerk. Is he a gambler? He insisted that he'll return it ASAP. Sounds like he's counting on that big win. OP is not the jerk for sure. I hope she had a prenup. Husband needs help. If you could return that much money ASAP, you wouldn't need it in the first place. You would be open and honest about your time frame for repaying it. This is absolutely a gambling debt. I've been around this. The last person I had to cut from my life was this person, a friend who gambled constantly, always needed to borrow money, contingent he'd be able to pay back double as soon as possible. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't here either. 2 years sounds about right for the maximum amount of time one is able to hide something like this from another person that's close to them. OP has $20,000 in the bank and is willing to give her financially irresponsible husband $14,000 if he agrees to sign a piece of paper? Whether he signs a contract or not, there's no way she's getting that money back. I'm a lawyer. In most small claims court, you can only sue for $5,000 or maybe $10,000, and even that takes time and effort just to get the judgment. Then you have to go back to court to try and collect on the damages by garnishing wages, etc. If hubby has nothing left, then there's nothing she can go after. OP, do not loan your husband any money. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
Wow, no wonder the guy's got 2 ex-wives, but probably have a 3rd one soon as well.
I told my friend that she will never be a part of my family-in-law no matter how much she wants to be. I, 29 female, went to university and made a friend who we'll call Laura, who's 29. Laura was from a small town and didn't have many friends, so she latched onto me pretty tightly. I do really like her, but she saw me as a best friend, and I only saw her as a close friend. Having moved back to our respective cities, we don't see much of each other anymore. I got married about 6 weeks ago. ETA, been with my now husband for 15 years, and I invited Laura. Laura ended up hooking up with my husband's brother, Liam, who's 24. I admit, I raised my eyebrows at this, but we're all adults, and I thought that was that. Nope. Last week, Laura called me and said that she had news. She told me that she was pregnant and that it can only be Liam's baby. She asked for Liam's phone number so that she could tell him. I offered to be there for her in any way that I could, but I genuinely did not think she would keep it. Less than an hour later, my husband called me. He was at work and I hadn't yet told him the news, stating that Liam had called him distraught and stressed and scared. He said Liam told him Laura said she was keeping the baby and that she was willing to move to our city so that he could be closer to their kid. For the past week, she's been calling me saying that she's excited for Liam to get to know her better, that she's so happy I'm going to be an auntie to her baby, and asking me to help her look for flats near my home. I couldn't listen to her excitement whilst watching Liam's despair grow, and eventually I just stopped answering the phone. Well, 2 nights ago, she turned up at my home unannounced with an overnight bag in hand. I asked why she was here, and she said that we're family now and that family helps family. Here's where I may be the jerk. I snapped and told her we weren't family and that we would never be family, that her trying to force her way into the Cooper family by having a baby is not the same as marrying into it. I told her to get whatever fantasy she had conjured of Liam falling in love with her out of her head and to accept that he does not want this baby as it will ruin his life. She didn't say a word to me. She just turned and walked away from my front door. I've tried calling her since, but she's not answering the phone. Earlier today, got a call from a mutual friend telling me that Laura has said she's not going to be having it after all, as she doesn't want to be tied to such toxic people. Apparently, she texted Liam the same thing, and now my in-laws are mad that I convinced her to do this to their first grandkid. And my sister-in-law said I'm just jealous that I wasn't having the first Cooper baby, which isn't true at all. So Reddit, am I the jerk for getting involved in the situation? ETA, answers to common questions. 1. A paternity test was mentioned and Laura did agree to it, but only once the baby was born. 2. Liam is not planning on running away from his responsibility if she keeps the baby. He's a theater actor who is away for months at a time and doesn't earn a lot of money. A baby would seriously impact his career, but he said he would not abandon his kid even if it meant giving up his dream. He's clearly stated to Laura that he did not want to be a father and did not intend to start a relationship, but for whatever reason, she chose to ignore that. 3. Laura and I weren't really close or best friends anymore before all of this. We were close at uni, but naturally drifted apart when we moved to different cities. We see each other maybe twice a year at weddings and events, and she has come to stay with me once or twice in the past 8 years. 4. She sent a picture of a pregnancy test when she said she was pregnant, but so far there is no other proof. Everyone keeps asking if I'm certain she's pregnant, and truthfully, I don't know. But I wouldn't have thought her to lie about this kind of a thing. 5. In regards to my Cooper comments, she was joking about changing her name to match her baby's surname and getting family portraits done. I thought I was trying to get her to understand that it might take people some time to come around to the situation and that Liam did not want a relationship, but it came out harsher than I intended, and I accept that was horrible of me to say. 6. People are assuming I think negatively of Laura in other aspects of her life, or have accused me of thinking her too trashy or frumpy to be part of the Cooper family. Laura is smart, stunning, and stylish. She has a great job and works hard. She isn't some shut-in with no life. Final edit. Although the judgment is not the jerk, I do regret how I spoke to a person who I was meant to be a friend to. I was out of line with my comments, and I fully intend to apologize to her, though I do not expect her to forgive me. I think it's best for me to distance myself from the situation until emotions have calmed down. Not the jerk. I personally think that having a baby by a stranger, especially one that does not want the kid, is very unlikely to go well. Laura needed a reality check, but maybe it would have been better for you to encourage Liam to stand up for himself and to be firm with her rather than wallowing in self-pity. OP. Thank you, and I do understand your point. Liam is the baby of his siblings and sometimes comes across as younger than he is. He seems to have retreated into himself and hasn't been able to really tell Laura how much this is going to affect him in a way that would make her see that she's putting him in a very difficult situation. Whenever he's tried to speak to her, apparently she would talk over him. Laura isn't putting him in a difficult situation. He knew what was at stake when he hooked up with her, and the very least he could have done was grow up and have a conversation with Laura if he wanted to be a deadbeat father, instead of letting his sister-in-law do his dirty work. The silver lining is that she's right. She'd be better off without you in her life. The fact that after she was apparently head over heels about this baby and then immediately jumped to not having it says to me that there was never a baby to begin with, and she has some strange obsession with OP and is using this invented situation to force herself into her life. I'm divided, but I would go with not the jerk. I don't think she's mentally well. She hooked up with him, got pregnant, and thinks that the whole family is also hers now, and she could do what she wants? That's uncomfortable crazy, and I think she did it on purpose to get pregnant. Did she even have proof of it? It could be a lie. And then she stood unannounced in front of your door, demanding you to take her in? Did she talk with Liam about what she wanted, or did she decide all of this stuff by herself? She's delusional and thought that a baby trap would give her the family she wants. She needs therapy, and you need to go no contact with her because of her craziness. Everyone sucks here. Liam is a big boy. He messed up, and although his anxiety is understandable, It's his problem to deal with. You don't need to defend him. You were cruel to Laura, although her showing up at your front door was overstepping, and I'll get to that in a minute. What you said was rude. At no point did you have an adult conversation about things. Wow, Laura, I'm happy you're so excited, but things are moving really fast here, etc. From her standpoint, you just snapped at her out of the blue and told her that having an entire baby does not give her the same legitimacy of being a Cooper than you marrying into it. By the way, super crappy thing to say. Laura is acting a little strange, I'll give you that. Your wedding was 6 weeks ago. That's extremely early for a pregnancy to be announced to everyone like that. I'm honestly shocked she even knows she's pregnant. It's really odd to be set on having a baby with a man who obviously does not want to raise said baby with you, ignore his distress, but suddenly want to not have it when said man's sister-in-law gets mad at you. Also, showing up on your doorstep with an overnight bag without asking was a huge overstep and not cool. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Laura? Please let us know.
If this story had been told by Laura from her perspective, just imagine how different all the comments would be.
Don't you just love the people on Reddit? Am I the jerk for telling my sister that she overreacted when she screamed at me for entering her and her husband's room? So I, female 23, am a full-time college student. Right now I'm living with my sister, Claire, and her husband, Thomas, while I get through my current semester. I don't work, so I don't have everything I need for my daily skin and hair routine, so I borrow stuff from Claire. Claire didn't have an issue in the beginning, but then started complaining about me randomly walking into her room, but I go in there looking for the stuff that I asked for. She gave me a hard time just because I walked in on Thomas getting dressed to get the eyeshadow I borrowed from her. And then that other time when I walked in late at night. She told me I needed to get her permission to enter the room before I take anything, but I figured this would make things complicated. It's already difficult enough that I have to ask to borrow an item. So last night around 10 p.m., I went upstairs and into her room to grab the hairdryer. I walked in and whoops, I saw them doing the do. I had no idea that's what they were doing in there, especially since Claire told me that Thomas had been feeling sick the past 2 days. She lashed out at me, yelling that I get out. I quickly grabbed the hairdryer, then walked out and shut the door. Had to have that hairdryer, didn't you? Minutes later, she came downstairs in her robe and went off on me, saying she was done with me, repeatedly disrespecting and violating her and her husband's privacy. I told her it was cool, no big deal, and that I needed the hairdryer, but I didn't have time to ask for permission. She got even louder, saying I had no business barging into her marital space and embarrassing her and her husband like this. I told her that I was sorry, but she really is overreacting to the whole thing. This made her even more upset. She went on about how I'm living here rent-free and yet not being respectable enough. I stopped arguing and went to my room. This morning, Thomas left the house early and Claire ignored me at breakfast, still upset, saying that I don't get to say whether she overreacted or not and that my behavior was inappropriate. She even wants me to apologize to her husband for making last night awkward. You're the jerk. I'm honestly baffled that you're even asking. She specifically requested that you not go into her room without asking, and you ignored that because you didn't feel like asking? How do you not see how wrong you are? Not the jerk. People really do overreact about you have to knock first. If you're talking to your kid, okay, but you don't talk that way to a grown adult. We aren't students in school who need permission to go to the bathroom, and these idiots should have had their door locked, so that's on them. I have a sister who also was a total drama queen with this kind of stuff. Long story short, after years of her overreacting to things I did, I finally gave her something to overreact about, which resulted in her divorcing her husband. Then he tried to get with me, but I wasn't interested. Told him our fling was just a way I could get back at my sister for everything she had put me through. I don't know if Thomas is hot or not, but you might want to consider this, as I guarantee your sister would be getting a taste of her own medicine. One thing I found in my 26 years of life is there's no better way to get revenge on a bad woman than to hook up with her hubby. I know that makes me sound like a total jerk, but after everything I've been through, I think I deserve to be a jerk sometimes. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know.
I will never understand how some people can be so darn rude. And I'm a Karen myself, so what does that tell you?
I took my father's retirement pension and gave it to my mother. My father is a jerk. Growing up with him was less than fun, and I can assure you, based on witnessing it, he was not a good husband. I'd go on about what a jerk my father is, but instead I'll quote a judge. "You're the most despicable human I've ever had in my courtroom," and that's coming from a family court judge. I read this winning endorsement of my dad's personality in the court documents I acquired relative to his divorce with my mom, the same place I discovered the activity he had engaged in to steal from my mom. It's also where I found the information I needed to get one over on him so severely he's going to disinherit me. A frame of reference about my father is that he's a pathological narcissist and behaves exactly how those people are compelled to act. They aren't generous people, and punching them in the wallet is the best way to get them. About 10 months ago, when our tale begins, I was going through some stuff. Stuff being a whole lot of PTSD related to both my dad's treatment and my job as a paramedic. He did a ton that affected me deeply, things that I needed to move past, along with all the other stress from 15 years of EMS. I'm trying to move past and trying to work through everything. I quit drinking, started getting therapy, and I was thinking having my dad involved might help me in our relationship. Well, I seriously misjudged that one, so you'll probably be unsurprised to hear that conversation went swimmingly. I'll spare you the details, but when I broached the subject with him, our back and forth degenerated into him screaming at me that I'm a failed paramedic, liar, and an alcoholic. While I have certain pride about my job, I have more pride in my 14-month sobriety, so hearing this from my old man might have caused me to behave a bit psychotically. I got right ticked off at him and decided to dig up every bit of dirt I could, see what kind of man he actually is and has been. When it was convenient, I hopped in the mystery machine before taking a trip to the courthouse. Everything is public record, so I bulk bought copies before retiring to my easy chair to read, plot, and pet my white long-haired cat. For good measure, I obtained a file of divorce document from my mother. Soon enough, I hit upon a line of inquiry worth following up on. It seems that during the final settlement of my parents' divorce, in 2002, my mother was awarded 1/3 of my father's employment pension. She was a stay-at-home mother and could not earn one herself, so it was given to her by a judge. Mighty strange, because my father, as he brags, took a nearly full pension and retired a bit early. No way that jerk was living the last 10 years after retiring early on 2/3 of a pension. He isn't constantly complaining about it. So I asked my mother if she was collecting a pension from his job or had cashed out the value, $100,000 plus at the time, 20 years ago. No to both questions. Well, that's interesting. I wonder if that's collectible on, and what 20 years of compound interest from a pension fund makes it worth. Well, I did eventually find out, along with the fact that my dear old dad had been collecting my mother's portion for 10 years, in open violation of a legal order from a judge. Why didn't my mother pursue this sooner? A combination of being unable to afford a lawyer, being his victim for 20 years, and pessimism after so much of his continued dodging obligation to the order, she just quit. There's effectively no statute of limitations he could hide behind because of the wording of the settlement. As far as I could tell, I had him dead to rights, and my mother would be collecting. It would be a slam dunk. I just needed to hire a lawyer to help me, so I set out to find the most unbalanced psycho who passed the bar exam. As it says in the good book, do unto others as they would do unto you, so that's what I set out to do. My lawyer suggested we send a demand letter to the pension office to try and remedy it before filing what would undoubtedly be an easy win for him. I agreed in spirit and instead phoned up the pension office and got put through to the woman managing my father's file. Well, she was a delight, and it was a trivial matter for me to get her to loathe my dad. We talked for 45 minutes, and all our conversations about life, families, and relationships, we got down to some things of note. Since I could show her correspondence her office had sent to my father, CC'd my mom on some years ago, and ongoing for 5 consecutive years trying to resolve this matter, which he had ignored, she was more than willing to start the process on remedy immediately. Full cooperation from this lady in her office was a matter of merely providing documentation, and with my lawyer on retainer, this office was beyond asking my father to comply. They complied for him. About 2 months since I last spoke to my father, and he now had no idea his pension was about to take a serious hit. My mother's portion was already made whole and adjusted to reflect that her portion was brought to maturity, so his early retirement doesn't affect her fund. He loses 10 years of valuation to her. He also retired 3 years early, which knocks him down now to 17 years of pension valuation, not 27. If you'd forgotten, my dad had been collecting my mom's money and was overpaid by $30,000 per year for the last 10 years. Like I said, Mom was made whole, so the pension company is going to claw back that overpayment from his current pension fund. As much as I did this for spite and malicious glee, I did do it to give my mom a chance at a proper retirement. My mother started collecting her pension about 3 months after I contacted the pension office, and to celebrate, she bought tickets to New Zealand for the family for Christmas, so we can see our relatives. I was able to get most of my retainer from the lawyer back, and to celebrate, I went online to order a glitter bomb. I was able to ship it to my old man anonymously from another country. God bless the USA. I heard from my sister he opened it up in his car. He'll never get rid of it. Am I the jerk for leaving after I found out my sister-in-law was lying about her food allergy? I, female 18, turned 18 in early August. For my 18th birthday, I wanted to go out and celebrate with my family by going to my favorite Chinese restaurant. I'm quite a picky eater. I'm autistic and have issues with textures, but any type of Asian food is safe food for me. When it comes to more Western cuisine, I don't have a lot of options unless I make it at home. Everything was organized and ready to go, but a week prior to my birthday, my brother's fiancée, Vicky, who's 27, said that she can't go. She said she has a seafood allergy, and after contacting the restaurant, they said that they can't realistically cater to her and politely advised that she doesn't eat there. Vicky and my brother suggested that we go to this Italian restaurant instead. Everyone was on board, but I don't like Italian food. The textures of cheese, pasta, and all of it is just gross to me. I got upset because it was supposed to be a dinner for my birthday, and it was like I was forgotten about. I talked to my parents, and they told me to stop complaining. Vicky can't help having an allergy. So I sucked it up and went. I spent my birthday miserable and ended up just sneaking in my own snacks into the restaurant. Well, last weekend I spontaneously went over to my brother's house with no warning because I had forgotten my hoodie there from a few days prior. My brother let me inside, and I saw Vicky sit on the couch scoffing tuna like it's nobody's business. Me: I thought you were allergic to seafood. Vicky:
What are you talking about?
Me: My 18th birthday last month. You said we couldn't go to the Chinese restaurant because you're allergic to seafood. Vicky:
Well, I'm not medically allergic. I just can't stand the smell of all those shrimps and prawns. It makes me feel nauseous.
Me: So you ruined my 18th birthday because you don't like how seafood smells? Wow. I stormed out and blocked Vicky and my brother on everything. I couldn't believe this. I talked to my parents. They think I'm being dramatic and that it's just a restaurant, and told me to apologize to Vicky for speaking to her like that in her home. I was so angry, I went to stay with my boyfriend's family for a few days, who very kindly let me stay. My family thinks I went super overboard and are calling me a brat and entitled. I don't know how to feel. Was I the jerk? Not the jerk. I would usually agree with your parents and say that we should do what we can to make people with food allergies feel welcome. That means switching restaurants if someone can't eat at a particular restaurant. But this situation is different. First of all, as you said, it was your birthday. The right thing to do was for Vicky not to attend or to arrange with the restaurant to be allowed to bring her own food. She's not your blood relative, so she didn't have to be there. It's not okay that your parents let your brother and his girlfriend pick a restaurant you didn't like. You should ask them to take you out again to a restaurant of your choosing. Yes, you are angry about this, and I don't blame you. No one listened to you. Your parents let Vicky ruin your birthday. Now people are still dismissing and minimizing what you're saying. That would annoy anyone. I tried to save her $71, but Karen wanted a $100 Visa gift card. I was a department manager at an arts and crafts store a few years ago. A warm, pre-lockdown Saturday morning in May of 2018. I get called up by cashier who is known to be very soft-spoken. All the cashiers are busy. Holding up register 3 is a middle-aged lady with 2 carts chock full of crafts and baking stuff. The issue was the customer's 10% off coupon was expired by over a week and it was not working. Her total was around $557. The lady was already irate, berating the cashier, an 18-year-old, saying she can't believe coupons expired so soon after getting them in the paper, huffing about how she was a rewards member who shops here often since she was a Girl Scouts leader,
and how I should contact the newspaper she got the coupons from and make them either deliver it to her sooner or let corporate know the coupons should last for up to a month. I de-escalated the situation and apologized while explaining that I couldn't make corporate stop running different sales every week, but I would certainly manually take off the 10% myself. As I was doing this, I noticed she would save money with the paid membership we had recently implemented. With this membership, the customer would get a one-time 20% off their current order and 5% off every purchase thereafter. Yes, it was a ripoff, considering it offered almost exactly the same exact rewards that the free program offered. But seeing this lady had a huge order, I pointed out that not only would she get the membership essentially free, but it would save her $71, $20 more than she would have saved with her expired coupon. The lady jumps down my throat.
First, the cashier tries to tell me about this dumb membership, and now you? Do I look stupid? I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. I'm not a moron. I know there's a catch. Get me another manager. You're not going to trick me into paying for something more? Do I look stupid? You're insulting my intelligence. I'm tired of seeing your face. Get someone else up here now.
By then, I had already taken the 10% off, called another manager, even apologized, despite fuming, and she was still ranting. My fellow manager on duty came up. I stayed because I wanted the sweet glory of seeing this lady's face when she was told the exact same thing I had just told her. This sent the lady into another frenzy. We got the district manager on the line, who had literally left minutes before the interaction started, from a meeting where he commended me on being the best salesperson of this membership in the district, and he had to explain to her the same policy, that every employee was required by the company to offer this membership, and we were not trying to rip her off, but we apologized for the inconvenience. She still did not leave. Eventually, I asked her what she wanted, what it is that she wanted out of this interaction that by now had caused a whole scene and had taken up over half an hour. She demanded a $100 gift card, not to the store, but a $100 Visa gift card for wasting her time. How about no? We couldn't do that, of course. She ended up leaving with the promise that the district manager and general manager of the store would call her later. I ended up taking a 40-minute paid break in my car to release steam after that. When the district manager called her the week later to offer her a $10 certificate to the store, she told him to hold on a second, and we could all hear her in another store throwing the same kind of fit. Ridiculous.
Karen demands I rate her looks on a 0 through 10 scale, so I gave her a 0. I'm 19, female, and my 18-year-old brother is apparently a very beautiful person. He gets complimented 24/7 by all kinds of people and everyone adores him. He's modeled and all that jazz as well. You'd think our mom would be happy or proud of him, but no, she's jealous. I don't know why, considering he gets his looks from her, but she sees him as competition. Like, I'm sure she loves him, but she acts like a bitter kid sometimes. She comments about how she's skinnier and prettier and got more attention back in the day and more. It's insane. She literally copies his every move while also criticizing him at the same time. My brother doesn't really care and pretends that she's joking around, but he's starting to really fixate on how he looks, so it's definitely bothering him. My final straw was when my mom dragged him and herself over to me and made me rate them both out of 10. I tried ignoring her and brushing her aside, but she wouldn't let me leave and kept asking me to rate them. I had it and was like, "Goodness, Mom, you're a 0, and you've been a 0 since the second you started acting so crazy." She went quiet and began to cry, and then said that I'm a horrible excuse for a daughter. She wants me to apologize and hasn't left her bedroom since. I feel guilty because my mom is a really hard-headed person and she never cries. My dad, who thinks all this is ridiculous and fights with her because of her behavior, even thinks that I was too harsh. I'm just exhausted. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I hope you and your brother can set some boundaries with her. OP. I hope my brother can too. He's starting to see her as competition as well, unfortunately. Not the jerk. Her behavior is ridiculous and possibly harmful to your brother. And you had a point. No matter how outwardly pretty she is, acting like this makes her a 0. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their mom? Please let us know.
Maybe get your mom some ice cream that she can binge on while she cries and watches Golden Girls. I actually like that show, so don't at me.
Am I the jerk for shutting off my fiance's computer while he was playing his video games in my son's room at 1:30 in the morning? When we moved back to my family's house about a year ago, my fiance set up his gaming PC station in my elementary school age son's room since we have such a limited amount of space. He's not my son's biological father. My fiance and I have a baby and who sleeps in our room, so there's literally no space at all in our bedroom. I agreed to let him have his computer and desk in my son's room as it was the only room out of the two with just enough space. My fiance has always claimed that gaming stops him from going out to bars or spending extra money we don't have. Since moving back, I stressed to him that I don't want him to play late at night because I don't want him to disrupt my son's sleep and affect his circadian rhythm. Over the past year, my fiance hasn't respected my request as he's continued to play video games till pretty late at night, sometimes up to 4 a.m. on weekends. Whenever I bring it up to my fiance, my son always insists that he doesn't mind that my fiance is playing games in his room. My son probably enjoys the company, but he also makes a pillow wall around his face to block the bright lights every night. It bothers me since I know my son could be getting a better night's sleep without a mouse and keyboard clicking away with constant bright flashing lights from the computer monitor. About a month ago, I caught my fiance vaping in my son's room while playing video games while my son was asleep. I lost my marbles at my fiance and told him how he doesn't give a crap about my son's health or sleep. He claimed he doesn't believe in circadian rhythm. I made a very big deal out of this and gave him an ultimatum that he needed to stop gaming late at night and to never vape in my son's room again, or we're done. He promised to stop and has been pretty consistent by stopping at 10 p.m. and not vaping that I'm aware of. Well, last night I heard mumbling from my son's room, which woke me up around 1:30 a.m. and it brought rage to me. I demanded that my fiance get off his game, and he said he was almost done, just 20 more minutes until the match was over. I told him to get out of my son's room or I would be turning off the computer. I ended up pushing the power button to turn it off. Am I the jerk for turning off my fiance's computer during his match? I know my son claims he doesn't care that my fiance plays in his room. As his mom, I want my son to get a good night's rest. Additionally, my fiance never wakes up early to help me out with our kid and sleeps until 10:30 a.m. or later every single weekend. Edit. Fiance saw this post. He is actively packing his stuff and leaving. Not the jerk on that occasion, but you are the jerk for ever allowing him in your son's room to play video games all night and disturb your son. Plus the vaping? What? He's not even his dad. I ditched the guy pronto. Your kid deserves better. Not the jerk. Why are you staying with this man? He has to play video games or he'll spend all the money and go out to the bar? Nope. Either he pulls his head out of his rear and behaves like a responsible adult who respects you and your kids, or he finds a new place to live. Those are his options. OP. I don't know why I'm staying anymore. I feel miserable and do 90% of all parenting and of all the cooking and cleaning, etc. Video game addictions are real. He really needs help. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her fiance? Please let us know.
What a disrespectful dude. Glad to hear he hit the road.
Stop blaming the person I'm training for the rookie mistakes he's been making? Very well. I used to work as a temp in a cardboard factory. I started out assisting the machine operators in their work, but after the person who managed the materials, cutting forms, printing stamps, and ink, who henceforth shall be referred to as Dave, was forced to take a week off. Paid vacation he was forced to take before the end of the year, and the end of the year rush was coming up. And things went south because the floor managers couldn't keep up with his job and their own at the same time. The company decided we needed a second person to do Dave's job to avoid situations like that in the future. They tested several people by having them work together with Dave for a couple of hours, and apparently I was the only one who did a decent job, and so I was told that Dave would be training me. I was never asked if I was interested. I didn't even know they were looking for someone to help Dave until I arrived at work one Monday and my schedule said I would be working with Dave. Of course, I didn't mind, because since I was already capable of helping operate 8 of the 10 machines in the factory, I figured this was a great way to further solidify an actual contract with the company. Now, during his week off, Dave had met a woman and they had started dating. She would constantly text him while he was at work, and it showed in his productivity. Of course, COO figured his drop in productivity was because I was slowing him down. As time went on, Dave's girlfriend moved in with him.
Now, I haven't mentioned this yet, but the factory had a two-shift system, early shift and late shift. Most of us worked in rotating shifts, but Dave had a fixed early shift because he had to be there on Monday mornings. Now, this meant Dave and his girlfriend could never go out on weekends and even had to go to bed quite early, so Dave requested to be put back on rotating shifts once he had finished training me. The COO said he would look into it, but kept giving Dave excuses, so Dave started interviewing for another job. Then came the day me and Dave were called into the COO's office and got yelled at for not pulling our weight and stuff like that. One of the things mentioned was repeated tardiness. Dave couldn't deny that one. He had overslept several times in the last few months, but I had only been tardy once because of a flat tire. So wanting to set the record straight, I tried to interject about my flat tire, and the COO snapped at me to keep my trap shut while he's talking. So after his rant and he dismisses us from his office, I once again bring up the flat tire, and he just snaps at me again that I should have just avoided having a flat tire. That was the last drop for Dave. He got home, wrote his letter of resignation, mailed it to the COO, and accepted one of the job offers he had gotten that week. For the next 3 months, I'm stuck doing all the work on my own. Also during this time, due to a change in the laws in my country, I might become homeless unless I get a contract. So I start asking the COO for a contract, since I've been there 2.5 years as a temp at this point. Just like with Dave, he keeps giving me excuses. After an incident with them refusing any vacation time request I put in that included a Monday, they finally gave me someone to train to be my second. Let's call him Abdul. About a month after I started training Abdul, I get called into the floor manager's office. Apparently, a mistake was made somewhere, and he asks me how it happened. Now that was the first week I was letting Abdul work independently without me constantly telling him what to do. So I tell the floor manager that Abdul had done that job and I had not yet had the chance to inspect his work. The manager grumbles but just dismisses me. A week later, I get called in again for a similar situation. So after I point out that Abdul is learning and mistakes will be made. So this time, the manager blows up at me that I have to stop blaming everything on Abdul, and if I blame one more mistake on Abdul being a rookie, he's getting me fired. This is where the compliance comes in. Around this time, me and Abdul were put in opposing shifts. My first order of business every day would be to double check all of Abdul's work and fix any mistakes. I couldn't inform him of his mistakes, so he kept making them. Abdul also started to get sneaky. You see, part of our tasks had to be done in an area of the factory where only the two of us would frequently go. So Abdul would do all of the work that was to be done where people could see him work, leaving me with all the tasks behind the scenes, meaning I was never anywhere to be found. We also had these big barrels of ink, which were hooked up to a machine that mixed the basic colors of ink into other colors. Abdul had always refused to change these barrels when they were empty. He would usually state he hadn't had time, even though making sure those barrels aren't empty was a priority job. This eventually all culminates into a moment about 8 months after Dave left, where I am once again called into the COO's office. I'm thinking I'm finally getting my contract after 3 years as a temp. I'm also convinced Abdul got a contract the week before, though Abdul and the COO have always denied that. Instead, I'm told I'm fired. The COO also goes out of his way to inform me that he's been wanting to fire me for 6 months now because he blames me for Dave quitting, but was asked not to by the floor managers until I had trained someone to replace me, and they considered Abdul to be ready to do the job now. He also told me that he did appreciate the work I did, he just had a problem with me personally. After my meeting with the COO, I make my round of the factory to inform my coworkers that I've been fired and to say goodbye. The look on Abdul's face was pure panic. He suddenly realized that despite me demonstrating how to change those ink barrels, he had never actually done it himself, and as such, didn't remember how to do it. A week after I left, I got a message from one of my former coworkers that the entire factory was looking to go to the COO's office and demand they rehire me, because Abdul was not only doing a poor job, but he was also being a megalomaniac. I told her not to bother, because if they did rehire me, it would only make the COO hate me even more. Several months after, another former coworker informed me that not even a month after I was fired, Abdul was demoted back to assistant machine operator, and one of the floor managers had to take over his tasks full-time. Am I the jerk for telling my wife I shouldn't be poor each month while she still has a ton of money? Hey everyone. Me, 35 male, and my wife, 36 female,
have been married for 3 years. I have 2 kids from my first marriage who are 17 and 13, and she has 4 kids who are 17, 15, 12, and 8. I have 50-50 custody of my kids. She has full custody of her kids, and their dad is way behind on child support, so she provides all their financial support. I want to preface this by saying my wife and I keep our finances separate. My wife makes more than double what I do. She gets $50 an hour, and I get $22 an hour. It's always been like that. We agreed when we moved in together we would split the bills equitably based on our incomes. She ended up covering basically all household expenses: mortgage, utilities, cable, internet, food, etc. I would cover 1 week's worth of groceries and my car payment, car and motorcycle insurance, gas, cell phone, vapes, etc. This all changed when I wrecked my car earlier this year. I went shopping with my wife for a new car and really wanted an SUV. My wife made me look at cars too because they're a lot cheaper, but I had my mind set. When we sat down to finance it, they told me my payments would be about $850 a month versus about $380 a month for the car. I decided on the SUV, and my wife seemed upset. Anyway, my insurance readjusted after the accident, and with my car payment and other expenses, I barely have $100 in expendable income each month. My wife has fun money and still throws a lot into savings and projects around the house. I was speaking about being frustrated about this with my sister, and she mentioned that a sign of financial mistreatment is limiting access to household money. So I approached my wife and said I wanted to combine our accounts, that I shouldn't live like a pauper while she has money to throw around, and she told me that it was my own decision that led me to not have a lot of disposable income, and that if we wanted to discuss a budget for fun money for each of us, we could. I got really upset and told her it isn't loving or right for her to have so much left while I barely have 2 pennies to rub together. Things got heated, and I'm staying at my sister's for the weekend. I don't think wanting things to be even is so wrong, but my wife is kind of right that if I got a cheaper car, I would have had more money. So, am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Your income covers 1 week of food for your combined family of 8, and the rest goes to things just for you. Your car payment, your insurance, your vapes, etc. Who pays for the kids' activities, clothes, shoes, etc.? She's covering the roof over your head and the rest of the household bills, plus raising 4 kids with no child support and no financial help from you. This is not financial mistreatment. Her not handing over money to you for fun when you don't take on responsibilities and you make bad financial decisions on a car payment is not financial mistreatment. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
There's a reason they don't teach financial education in school. A population of generally financially illiterate people are much easier to capitalize on.
You want to fire me to save a buck? Go right ahead. So I recently met up with my uncle, and while talking about my major, programming computer science, he told me a story of when he got a promotion, his current position, by getting fired. Several years ago, my uncle, Dan, had a jerk of a boss who would always flaunt his status of being a manager to the lower-ranked employees and would also be critical of them for the smallest things, taking 2 or 3 minutes too long on breaks, talking to your coworker for even a second, or even taking a sip from your water bottle at your desk. My uncle and his coworkers hated this guy, but they loved the job, so they just put up with him for the time being. Uncle Dan told me it was so bad, nobody wanted to even interact with him outside of work, and he wasn't invited to any parties or get-togethers either. One day, boss decides to save money for the company by firing Dan for poor performance, and tells him the reason why is because they can rehire for cheaper. Now, Dan is a calm and logical man. He's very skilled in programming and has years of experience under his belt by that point in his life, so he knows there would be loads of companies fighting for him. Dan didn't put up a fight about it and just cleared out his desk that day, and a month later, while looking for other jobs, he was called by boss telling him he can have his job back, and when Dan refused, because he had a few offers, boss revealed that he was in trouble for firing him with the president. Uncle Dan explained to me that he coded the system they used to distribute assignments and organize tasks, which earned him the president's respect for his skill and expertise. So when he found out he was replaced with someone who, as Dan put it, wouldn't know his backside from an array, he was understandably livid, especially since he didn't hear about it until just now. So boss was forced to offer Dan his position and a raise to convince him to come back, was demoted, and was even more ostracized for the way he looked down on people in the past. It was a funny story. He gets fired and then is given an even better position and pay,
because his boss was trying to save the company money. He still has that position today, and his pay has only gotten better due to his skills, but the boss couldn't stand being on the same level as the lesser employees he mocked, so he's not there anymore. Karen asked me to babysit for her today while I was working on a boat. Was on a client's boat to take measurements for a job they'd like me to do. The place they're docked is alongside a lovely sidewalk that's open to the public. I was on the front deck when I heard a family walk by. I was aware of them, but I didn't look up until…
Excuse me?
It spooked me, as they were so close, but I looked up. A mother and her kid were standing there on the sidewalk in front of the boat. Sorry, you snuck up on me. Can I help you? Sometimes people stop to ask me directions to a bathroom or are curious about what I'm doing, so randomly striking up a conversation isn't uncommon, and I'm happy to help and make a bit of conversation.
Hey, can you watch my kid for a minute?
No explanation, no greeting, nothing. I was stunned into silence for a second while my brain tried to process. The mother took this time to interject before I could reply.
It's okay. She can just hang out on your boat with you.
She what? Her kid looked to be around 5 or so. Before she could start walking toward the pier, I finally gained enough brain power to speak. No, sorry, this isn't even my boat.
Oh, well, whose boat is it?
Like it's relevant. This is my client's boat.
Can she come on?
Ma'am, I'm working, I said, raising my voice a bit, holding up a bunch of measuring tools.
It's just for a minute,
she urged. I was appalled. Sorry, no can do. I was about to say more, but she interrupted before I could continue.
Well, can you get off the boat and watch her here then?
I gave her another stunned look. I'm working, I said a bit slower, and I'm sure my boss wouldn't appreciate me watching a stranger's kid while I'm on the clock. Again, I was about to say more, but her kid was whining and pulling on her mother's hand.
Fine,
she snapped suddenly, taking her kid away up the steps. Not gonna lie, it was really odd and unnerving, and my heart was beating really fast. I'm legitimately shocked. I should ask the owner of the boat if they can reverse their boat into the space next time so I don't have to face the general public while working anymore. Am I the jerk for tricking my husband into eating the food I cooked by making him think his mom sent it? My husband, Mickey, loves his mom's cooking. He always praises her for the food she makes and even mentioned it in his groom speech at the wedding. I consider myself a good cook. In fact, I'm going to just say that I'm even better than his mom. But the problem is, he doesn't even want to try my cooking or give me a chance to prove it. I thought this would change after marriage, but 5 months later, nothing's changed. What does he eat if he's not eating what I'm cooking? He's requested that his mom send him a meal every day to eat for dinner after getting off of work, except for the weekend where we go over to her house and we eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert there. Every single day, he'd come home and ask if his mom sent him a meal. I grew irritated of this, and whenever I try to offer him to taste any of the wasted food that I cook, he'd lay in bed and say he's full. So I came up with an idea. I cooked him the same meal his mom sent him that day and put it aside till he got home. He asked if his mom sent a meal for dinner, and I said yes, and served him my own version of the meal, not hers. He didn't notice anything different. He ate the whole thing with no hesitation while I sat across from him, asking him questions about how good the meal was. He went on and on, praising it, saying how perfect, exceptional it was, and how it was just what he needed after a long day at work. I smiled and said, "You're welcome." He froze and looked at me for a minute, looked down at the plate, then back at me and said,
"Wait, you made this, didn't you?"
I said, "With my own hand and from scratch." His face suddenly went red, and he got upset and said that this was not cool. I told him he never… What is wrong with this guy? I told him he never even gave me a chance to show him how good my cooking is, and that he's probably just used to his mom's cooking and is rejecting any other alternatives, which is unfair to me. He said that I shouldn't have lied to him and basically tricked him into eating food that he had no idea where it came from. I said he liked it and admitted that it was good, so what's the issue? He got up from his seat, threw the napkin, and said that I was unbelievable, then walked out. He got quiet the rest of the evening, then posted about it on his Facebook in a vague post about being tricked into eating someone's food like that. I felt guilty and bad, thinking maybe I really shouldn't have done this, but I was frustrated with how he kept turning down every meal I tried to cook him and then say, "No thanks, I prefer my mom's food." Am I the jerk? Info.
Why would you marry someone who refuses to eat your food and makes his mother make him dinner every day? Also, does his mom really want to make his food for the rest of his life? Or has he made up a story to get her to do it? Also, what will he eat when his mom passes and he still is a grown adult? Not the jerk. First of all, stop going to his mother's every weekend to eat. He can if he wants to, but you don't need to. Come on, girl, have some respect for yourself. Let his mother cook for him and be free of that chore. What you don't see is that he's manipulating you. He's letting you know every single day that you are not good enough for him. He prefers his mother over you. He's doing this to destroy your self-esteem, and he does it on purpose. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
Life's too short to spend it with people who don't respect you. You know Karen stay dropping facts, bruh.
Karen, those comics are worth a fortune. One of my all-time favorite stories to tell when hanging out with other comic book geeks. Backstory. So I used to be a huge comic book fan and buyer. I hung out at the local comic book shop for hours at a time, a couple of times a week, not counting shipment day, and talked shop with the owner, the guy who ran the shop, and the myriad of regular customers. Shop owner I'll dub Mr. Albertson. Guy who ran the shop will be Jeff, other monikers as people get introduced. The comic book shop was located on a busy street, and the back part of this shop was a living quarters for Mr. Albertson. There was no public restroom in the shop area. Now, Mr. Albertson was a very nice, intelligent guy, someone I called friend and respected. Sadly, though, he had issues when it came to hygiene. The bathroom in his living quarters was just plain nasty. As I had worked in rental property make-ready for over 20 years, when I say nasty, I mean get the flamethrower and burn it nasty. I knew this because I fixed the faucet in the bathroom once. Then I immediately went home and took a nice hot bath. Jeff, understandably, refused to use this bathroom. He would hold it until lunchtime and use the public restroom at a local restaurant. Afterwards, he would wait until he got home. Sometimes, however, Jeff just couldn't wait. The need was too urgent. When this happened, he would close the shop and take a break. Setup. One day while I was in the shop, I could tell Jeff was in some amount of distress. I asked him what was wrong, and he informed me that he really had to use the restroom, as something he ate was not agreeing with him. But he couldn't just close the shop due to the fact the shop's biggest customer was expected to come in at any time now to pick up his weekly order. I thought it over and told Jeff that I could stay and watch the store. I knew Mr. Big Bucks always paid with a check, so if he came in for his order while Jeff was away, I would simply tell him the amount Jeff always pre-calculated on the previous order invoice. Then I would take the check and slide it under the cash register. Jeff knew me very well from many years of hanging out in the shop, and my family's reputation for honesty and integrity was well known. Jeff readily agreed and made a run for it. 5 minutes later, Mr. Big Bucks walks in the door and asks where Jeff is. I tell him Jeff had to answer nature's call really badly. Therefore, I was watching the store until he got back. I went behind the counter, pulled out Mr. Big Bucks' weekly superhero addiction delivery and the preview's invoice order form. Mr. Big Bucks checked the order, approved the invoice amount, and wrote out the check. I then slid it under the cash register. Now, normally, Mr. Big Bucks is in a hurry, grabs his order, and leaves. But today, he was checking the inventory when Mr. Action walked in the door. Mr. Action is not just a regular, but a respected dealer in comic books and collectibles. Mr. Big Bucks and Mr. Action struck up a conversation. I just leaned against the counter and continued to read the latest issue of Amazing Spider-Man. A few pages later, a nasty scowl walked in the door, followed a second later by the face wearing it. It was a 30-ish something woman, hair pulled back, tight in a pigtail, pink sweatshirt with pink across the chest. She was carrying a cardboard box that looked like it had been in a flood.
You, give me $1,000,
she said as she heaved the box onto the counter. Excuse me? I replied while flinching back from the stench of mold coming from the box.
Give me $1,000.
Why?
You buy comics. These are comics, so give me my money.
More than a little thrown off by the demand for money and the attitude, I stuttered out a response. First off, I don't work here. Second, this shop isn't a dealer in old comics. Miss Nasty Scowl cut me off.
I know very well you work here. My boyfriend told me that the fat guy who works behind the counter would give me money for these old comics. He also told me not to let you cheat me. I want $1,000 now.
I looked down at my belly. If Gabriel Iglesias was around back then, he would say I was just shy of being fluffy. Look, lady, I don't work here. The regular fat guy is running. A snort and a guffle came from the comic racks. Shut it, you two, I said over my shoulder. I don't work here. I'm just watching the shop while the regular fat guy who runs the store is out on an errand. He'll be back soon. But even still, he doesn't buy old comics, I reiterated. Miss Nasty Scowl actually growled at me.
Even if there is another fat guy who normally runs this place, you are here now. You are behind the counter now, so you will give me my money now.
Mr. Action tried to say something, but he was cut off by Miss Nasty Scowl screaming,
You shut up. I wasn't talking to you, you ugly old jerk.
Well, I've been told I have the patience of a saint, but I got my limits. I looked at a visibly irritated Mr. Big Bucks and a now steaming mad Mr. Action. Suddenly, I had a thought. That thought bumped into a few others, and within seconds, I had a funny idea. Turning back to Miss Nasty Scowl, I said in a calm voice, You're right, miss. I apologize. You see, we get people coming in here trying to sell fake old comics. We have to be careful, you understand?
Whatever. Just give me my money.
Let me take a look at what I'm sure is a fine collection, I said with my best shoveling it deep smile. When I opened the old cardboard box's top, I nearly gagged at the smell of mold. Inside was indeed comics. Comics that looked like they may have been stored in a cellar that flooded. They were covered in mold, sticking together, and just in completely rotten shape. After flipping through a few that were not stuck together, I let out a loud gasp of shock. My God, I yelled. Mr. Action, come here quick. Look what she has. I'm fine over here, he said while pinching his nose. No, look, I firmly said while turning my head and giving a conspirator's wink and smirk at Mr. Action. Curious as to what I was up to, Mr. Action followed my prompt and came behind the counter. To Miss Nasty Scowl, You're in luck today. This is Mr. Action. He's our local authority on comic book appraisals. From what I've only glanced at, this collection of yours is worth way more than a measly $1,000. I'd say it's worth $20,000 at least. Right, Mr. Action? Mr. Action has known me for many years. He was, in fact, one of my teachers in high school and had seen my sense of humor in action many times. He had no idea where I was going with this, but he knew it would go someplace ridiculously funny, for us at least. Good Lord! These are Casper the Friendly Ghost comics, Richie Rich, and these are Archie comics, giving Miss Nasty Scowl his most eager expression. Do you have any idea how rare these comics are?
No. Are they worth more than $1,000?
Way more, I declared. In fact, Mr. Big Bucks, didn't you once buy an Archie comics collection at auction? What did you pay for it? 10 to 12 grand? I'm sorry, miss, but we are just a small-town collector shop. We simply do not have the budget to purchase this expensive collection. You need to take these to one of the big stores in the city. Mr. Action, what is the name of that dealer you are always complaining about? You know, the one who you said stole clients from you? I asked, knowing he would get my prompt. Sure enough, a nasty smile crossed his face. Mr. Burns, let me write down his address for you, my dear, Mr. Action said as he reached for a pen and a scrap piece of paper. Now, with address in hand and a greedy smile plastered on her face, Miss Nasty Scowl carried her box of moldy comics out of the store. What the heck was that all about? Mr. Big Bucks asked, still confused. Mr. Action and I set about explaining the prank we just pulled on the woman and a crooked dealer both Mr. Action and I had run afoul of on separate occasions. 20 minutes later, Jeff returned. The three of us ensured he was okay. When he asked if anything happened while he was gone, the three of us just shook our heads, and I said, nope. The next week, I went in to hang out with Jeff for a bit. Jeff looked at me for a second, then said, funny thing happened yesterday. A really upset woman came in here screaming about how our other employee lied to her. I thought she was talking about the owner, Mr. Albertson, at first, but then she said he was another fat guy like me. I told her I was the only employee. What did she say then? I asked. Nothing. She just screamed like a maniac and stormed out, leaving a box full of worthless old moldy comics.
New neighbor destroyed my vegetable garden on purpose. We moved into our new house in January of this year. There's a side yard of grass and sod that belongs to our property that separates my house from my neighbor's home. Everything seemed great when we moved in until I planted a small raised vegetable garden in the side yard, only place in the yard with enough sun to grow veggies. The elderly neighbor was unhappy that I had pulled up the grass and said she was going to get my husband on me. My husband loves my garden and the fresh veggies that we get from it daily. Neighbor was quiet for a few months, happily accepted any produce I offered to her. Then out of the blue, she calls code enforcement on my garden, saying it was full of dead plants. Code enforcement came out, saw a garden with no dead plants and tons of melons and peppers and laughed, said that I was not violating code and my garden looked great. Neighbor wasn't happy that code enforcement did not make me remove my garden, so she proceeded to trespass onto my property and mow over all of my watermelon and cantaloupe vines, destroying all of the melons that weren't ripe yet. I approached her and told her not to trespass or mow on my property. She turned away and walked off without saying anything and continued to mow on my property. The next day, I go to throw some trash in the outside bin and I see the neighbor on my property spreading poison on my organic veggie garden. I started filming her, told her to stop, and she continued. That night, both of my dogs got very sick. They were throwing up. They had been in my fenced backyard only, not near the front where I had videotaped her doing what she did. So I called the cops. They came and talked with her, told her she could not come on my property. She screamed and had a fit at me in front of the cop. The neighbor also smiled when I mentioned my dogs getting sick. The cop saw her smile and told me to immediately get cameras put up everywhere as my animals didn't appear to be safe in my yard. I didn't press charges as I just wanted her to stop and leave me alone. However, she is now continuing to trespass on my property. It's all caught on video. She literally walked past the no trespassing sign to mow 4 to 5 feet onto my property. My husband wants to let it go. I fear for my 2-year-old daughter's safety and for the safety of my 2 dogs. She is blatantly disregarding the orders of the police officer. I'm a wreck over all of this. I'm going to have to remove all of the poisoned soil and remediate the ground. All of my other neighbors have been super supportive of my plight and tell me not to back down to her bullying attempts. What should I do? Update. Thank you everyone for the thoughts. I will be going to the police station tomorrow to press charges. Why the heck wouldn't you press charges after all of that? My goodness, that's a no-brainer. She is, as evidenced by your OP, she's obviously not going to stop. I mean, you ought to know that. You've asked her how many times already, and she still blatantly disregards and disrespects your wishes. Apparently, this is a game to her. If her smiling after hearing your dogs got sick in front of a law enforcement officer isn't enough to tell you she's a psycho, then I don't know what will. Press charges and press them hard. Your family is in obvious danger. And build a fence with a locking access gate. Good luck. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you report your neighbor to the police again or not? Please let us know.
I can't even tell you what I'd do to them. Let's just say they'd be making a Lifetime movie about me. And boy, would it be good.
Call me a sad, poor person? Well, time to ruin your career. Let me start off by saying that my family is financially stable and have been well off since the days of my great-grandfather. We use the money to fund our charities and put almost all the money we earn back into our business, which is a decently sized attraction ranch that's sort of become a small-town attraction here. We are also not white, but Native American, with my father coming from Mohawk ancestry and my mother coming from the Haida ancestry. We also pay an affordable living wage to all our employees because we value them, and that's how you keep the good employees, and they're like a family to us. Because of this, our family is very well known to the local community. Now, for privacy reasons, I do not use my real name online. I have 2 names, my more traditional native name and my more modern English name. I use my English name online with my mother's maiden name. My brother and I have very strange and very unconventional English names, as we were named after characters from a movie about a boy, a book, a warrior, and a child empress with an impossibly annoying name. We only use these names when needed, so we both use them for online platforms. Let's say that we are Bastion and Artax. I recently got married, and my partner and I decided it was time for us to look at houses. We decided to look at some houses in the area where we lived, and we thought it was time to speak to a financial advisor. After a few days of waiting, I was able to get in touch with a local advisor my father had dealt with over Facebook, whom I have never met but have heard a great deal about, and he told me that he was holding a Facebook Live seminar later that day about mortgaging and property ownership.
I had some time, so I decided to sit in on the seminar. To say the seminar was a joke is laughable at best. The man running it was a former athlete who had been dropped by his minor level team due to injury, and his only saving grace was finding work for the bank. This I found out on his LinkedIn profile page, which he had sent a link to at the beginning of the seminar while he spoke about his credentials. He had us sit for half an hour before he decided it was time for all of us to participate and had us react to things. Use the hug reaction if you like this, or the wow reaction if you don't. Use the sad reaction for this, or the thumbs up if that was helpful. Eventually, he asked a question about home ownership. Now, technically, I do own a home already, as I have equal ownership of the house my brother lives in, by his insistence, though I think it was just to boost my credit score when I turned 18, and he began to give examples of houses on the market that those in the seminar would be interested in buying. At the end of each one, he would do the react one again, but this time with the anger react if you don't like it, or the laugh reaction if you did. Well, I saw a house that would have been perfect for my partner and I, so I clicked on the laugh reaction. What came next, I was not prepared for. Instead of continuing on with the seminar, the man running it decided he wanted to vet those who said they wanted the houses he had shown. I honestly have no idea why, but when he came to my name, I guess he clicked on my profile and saw my picture. Now, my picture isn't the worst thing in the world, it's just a picture of me in a silly Halloween wig smiling. I'm a goofy person and all my friends know it. He had judged me based on my profile picture alone. He couldn't see my profile because we aren't friends, yay for privacy settings, and said the following.
Why is there always at least one sad poor person with a weird hair color in these seminars? They're for actual people who want to actually buy a house. You can go back to wherever you came from and buy a house with whatever money they used there.
Now, what the advisor hadn't known was that I had been recording the seminar through my computer so I could show my partner what had been said. They were out of the house at the time and had asked me to record it for them on my computer and to go through it with them when they came home. To say I was upset by this was a slight understatement. I was mad, not for me, but for others this guy had probably treated this way. He had based a decision solely on the way I looked, without knowing me, my financial background, or anything else about me. How many others had he done this to? Then a thought came across my mind. This is a man who had dealings with my father, his friends, and their friends, all of which had their investments in the bank that he worked in. Now, I wasn't a member of said bank, but I had been planning on using them when the time came for buying a house. I wanted to get back at this guy who had treated me so poorly, and I wasn't even a customer. Now, it was time for the pro revenge. I started off by calling my parents, both of whom have sizable investments in the bank as well as business accounts with them. I told them what had happened and sent them the recorded video where you could clearly see my profile in the shot and what he had said. I swear, I saw my father turn as bright as a red LED light, and my mother tried to calm him down, as she usually does, but I knew it was no use. My father left to call his friends, while my mother made sure I was all right. I am. See, my parents were one of the two big accounts at the bank where this advisor worked. The other belonged to one of my dad's longtime friends and the father of one of my best friends. I told my parents that I just wanted to make sure that they hadn't been treated like I had been, since my mom often dyes her hair crazy colors when we do fundraising at the ranch, and my dad has had to give himself an undercut for a few years due to needing surgery, and he has hair longer than I do. I wouldn't know the repercussions of this one phone call until the next day, when my dad showed up at my current residence and told me he was taking me out for the day with his buddy. I said I'd go with them because you do not say no to two giant 6'10" native dudes who handle horses day in and day out and are built like brick houses. I got into the truck and we drove into town. We arrived at the bank after a quick stop to Starbucks and the three of us entered. My father and his friend were immediately greeted by the greeter at said branch, and the first thing my father's friend says is that he wants to meet with the branch manager ASAP. My father says the same, and the three of us wait as she gets the manager on the phone. The bank manager, who I have met before, greets the three of us. My father tells me to wait in the lobby, and I watch as they disappear into the manager's office. Now, what I'll tell you next are the words that came straight from my father's mouth. As the three of them sat in the manager's office, both my father and his friends say that they're going to close all of their accounts, effective immediately. All the stocks, investments, business accounts, everything will be closed by the time they leave the office. The branch manager is stunned and asks why, to which my father pulls out his phone and he plays the video I had sent him to said manager. My father says the manager looked as white as snow when he saw it, and immediately I could hear this from the lobby, yelled out for said financial advisor to, and I quote, "Get in the office right now." That's when I saw the advisor who had belittled me online run into the office. The manager asked the advisor to explain himself, to which the advisor tried to play it off as a joke. My father and his friend told him they had the entire recording of the seminar, and that no, he wasn't joking, and they were now pulling all their accounts out of said bank. The advisor, now seeing he had been cornered, practically started begging them to stay, saying that he will apologize to me and that it was all taken out of context. My father looked to his friend, who then said, "Sounds like something a sad poor person would say." He then made sure his accounts were closed and everything was set before he left the office. My father did the same as the advisor began to tremble. Before he left the office, however, my father extended a hand to the advisor and said, "I think you might have forgotten who I am. I'm Dad's full name, father of Artax, Mom's last name." We left, and a few weeks later, I saw the same advisor as I was walking into town, behind the cash register at the Starbucks. I believe he saw me when I walked in, because he suddenly had something to do in the back room and didn't leave until I left the store. Back into my car and blow me off for months? You'll be sorry. This story is from the better part of a decade ago, when I was pretty naive and only a couple years out of high school. I had a bit of a rough patch after dropping out of university and ended up living in my '06 Corolla, manual transmission with roller windows, the bare bones build, for a number of months. At some point during this time, I was waiting for a pump to open at a gas station with my younger sister when another sedan backs out of one of those spots straight into the side of my vehicle. I got out right away as the line wasn't moving and surveyed the damage, while the two gentlemen from the offending vehicle approached me. As I observed 2 or 3 pretty obvious dings on 2 of the panels that join near the rear wheel well, the man from the passenger seat engaged communication, telling me that he will give me $500 to take care of this right now. Now, I may have been, and still may be, naive, but I had been in one prior accident, literally the first time I drove with my brand spanking new driver's license to get a gallon of milk for Mom, and admitted fault very quickly, and was determined to be less panicked and more reserved in the event of another accident. So I declined the man's offer and asked to exchange information with the driver, to which he supplied his driver's license, which I then took a picture of, and his business card. His title was the Senior Vice President Relationship Manager at a bank a couple of towns over, and I also made sure to take a shot of his license plate. Satisfied that I knew who he was, although with a nagging doubt in my mind about not actually collecting any insurance information, I continued with my evening and enjoyed sushi with my sister and parents. Initially, upon my contacting the offending party, communications were relatively smooth, with Mr. Banker asking me to get an official estimate, to which I obliged. I didn't know anything about vehicle service beyond buying oil changes and fuel, so I just looked up a body shop near me and went there. It was a shop one town over with a name like Frank's Auto Shop or the like, obviously a local kind of place. They assessed the damage, which was purely cosmetic damage, but it would require them to disassemble most of the part side of the vehicle, as the Corolla is, as I understand, designed to be cheap to manufacture and reliable, but not convenient to do localized repairs. The estimate put us at about $1,600. I made no delay in relaying said estimate to Mr. Banker, who called me post-haste to inform me that that's ridiculous. There's no way it costs that much. They're not a reputable shop. He then informs me to go to a different shop, which is a nationwide chain, which he says is reputable. Basically, all but accusing me of trying to take him for a ride. I'm living in this car, man. I'm just trying not to get done out of what little I have. Anyways, I oblige him because I feel it's more likely to lead to a resolution than arguing while I'm all flustered and nervous. But remember, I'm a sheltered 20-year-old who has no idea how any of this stuff actually works. So when I look up the nearest branch under his preferred brand name and go there, I discover it's a branch that actually specializes in German cars like Porsche. I have no idea if this impacted their estimate in terms of hours worked, as obviously the Corolla would be a bit of an unfamiliar machine to them. But regardless, the new estimate put us closer to $2,000. I had a grin walking out of that office. So I send Mr. Banker the new estimate from his oh-so-official shop. Turns out, local guys actually can give great deals. Who knew? And I believe he pretty much ghosted me from there.
One or two texts may have been exchanged, it's a little fuzzy. The gist of it was, he didn't want to deal with the situation, and I think he knew that I was a nervous and somewhat out of my depth kid, so he wanted to leverage his confidence and bully me into silence. Reddit, I'm not proud of it, but it worked for a time. I was not really doing what I needed to do or thinking the way I needed to think at this point in my life, so among all the other things I was neglecting, this situation fell by the wayside after a couple of weeks. My parents, frustrated with my lack of life progress, were categorically unsupportive, despite my father being an attorney. As far as he was concerned, he paid for the car, which I was grateful for, and the insurance for that first couple months, and that's all he needed to contribute. I don't blame him, but at the time, it was pretty deflating, as I always was hoping that he would be my ace in the hole. After a number of months, probably around 3 to 4, I finally found a job. It was a really sketchy, pure commission sales job over the phone that is a whole saga unto itself, but it did come with a sales manager who had some experience dealing with petty squabbles, and it was he who was my savior. After a couple of weeks or so of working for him, somehow the situation came up in conversation. Honestly, it probably didn't take that long. I tend to just blabber on and on about whatever's on my mind, and he suggested that, as I knew where he worked and had his license so I knew where he lived, I should make it personal. Under new boss tutelage, I proceeded to type up a written sequence of events, starting with the gas station incident, including the multiple estimates and my open communication and its reception of demeaning demands, and I printed multiple copies. I do consider myself to be a somewhat forceful and yet still conservative writer, if that makes sense. I described the events that transpired with no flattery to the involved parties, but also no embellishment, judgment, or personal opinions. It's fantastic what you can achieve by choosing words with just a bit of a sinister tint, but which still describe the situation literally. Then, with boss encouragement and permission, I took a long lunch with him tagging along. We loved to go to a local barbecue place, and we visited his condo building. I was lucky enough to be let in by a neighbor and proceeded to tape one copy of my little novel to his door for all the neighbors to read if they got home before him, and then slid another one under his door to make sure he had a chance to experience it himself. But we weren't finished yet. His neighbors might shame him, but they really have no real leverage. That's just the petty part. Next, we visited his bank. Now, I was really hoping to catch him there, fluttering as my heart was, because I knew that with my boss right behind me to catch me if I faltered, I would be able to confront him in glorious verbal combat. Unfortunately, I didn't get to live out my fantasy of little guy puffed up with big guy behind him cracking his knuckles menacingly just in case things get out of hand. But I did get to meet his boss, who was a lovely lady who was very open to listening to my explanation of why I was there, and even accepted the packet of papers I had with her own hands. Reddit, at this point I saw the look in her eyes and knew that this would get his attention. I didn't think she cared about me, but I did know that she didn't enjoy being accosted at her place of work by some random, almost teenager to complain about some very sketchy behavior by her big bad senior vice president relationship manager. He texted me the next day. I never found out what kind of repercussions he faced, if any. I don't know if it was the neighbors or his manager who got to him. I can see it going either way. A guy living in a condo such as his probably cares about his image quite a bit, and his neighbors ridiculing him for such a thing could be as impactful as his boss demanding that he resolve the situation ASAP. Who knows? What I do know is that he was still very salty about the situation. I guess with my silence, he had figured he won. And honestly, he probably would have if I hadn't had a boss who took such a liking to me and encouraged me to believe in myself in dealing with the man. His text amounted to, "I've sent the information to my insurance. As of now, I'm not involved." I was so relieved. I felt powerful and gratified, and like I was finally going to be able to move out of my car. My boss slowed me down. Before I could say anything back to Mr. Banker, he told me to just let him dictate. I happily obliged. Paraphrasing, "That's not how this works. You're involved until I'm paid and made whole. I will continue to be in contact about any complications moving forward until the situation is resolved." There was really no benefit to being in contact with him anymore, other than rubbing it in his face that we had won, that his bad behavior had only compounded the issue, and now he gets to experience the bitterness of his at-fault accident all over again almost half a year later, along with his neighbors and coworkers knowing about it, and knowing he tried to dodge it, and his manager knowing that it was one of the most baby-faced, nervous, skinniest kids possible coming up and publicly shaming him for what he did. Am I the jerk for missing my daughter's birth? For a little background information, I, 28, male, have a beautiful wife who's 27. We've been trying for a baby for about 3 years now and have known each other since we were in high school. When my wife found out she was pregnant, we were thrilled and have been getting prepared for months now. She's currently 9 months pregnant. My dad is a real jerk, but he keeps me employed. He owns a pretty nice Italian restaurant that has been run by my family for decades. I've worked there since I was about 15, and I'm now the head chef. The problem is, he treats his employees pretty badly, including myself. And if you even miss one shift, you get demoted or even worse, fired. I was in the middle of a very hectic shift on the busiest day of the week when my mother-in-law called saying my wife went into labor and I needed to get to the hospital right away. When I asked my dad if I could go, he said, "You can go if you're okay with being unemployed," which I couldn't risk because after the baby was born, my wife would be off work for quite a while to be a stay-at-home mom. The reason my dad was so mad at the idea of me leaving was because he was understaffed and really needed my help. When I tried calling my mother-in-law, she wouldn't pick up, so I just kept working, and I thought that I could explain myself later. Later, when it was time to go home, I drove to the hospital, but mother-in-law and her sisters refused to let me in the room and called me names like a bad father and a bad husband. When it was finally time to leave the hospital, my wife and newborn baby went home with mother-in-law, and they haven't spoken to me in days, even when I try and apologize and explain myself. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I need to know. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Here's a news flash. Lots of restaurants need staff. You should have gotten out from under your father's thumb a long time ago, before it affected your wife and your baby. I'd say more, but I don't want to hold you up because you have a lot of groveling to do. A lot. You're the jerk. Grow a backbone. You left your wife to go through one of the hardest things without you because you can't set boundaries, and you didn't even have the decency to let her know you weren't coming. Obviously, your dad is the biggest jerk, but you're a close second for allowing this and for basically abandoning your wife with no explanation. You're the jerk. You had 9 months, and even years since you've been planning to have a kid for a long time, even before your wife became pregnant, to make contingency plans and work out with your dad how to keep the restaurant staffed during your daughter's birth. You apparently failed to take even cursory steps to plan for time off around the time of the birth. That's a serious failing as a parent. What was your plan? Were you going to leave your recovering wife home with a newborn and never take any time off to help her and to bond with your kid? Not the jerk, but your dad is. Her mom and sister are too. It would be irresponsible to quit your job without another job lined up when you have a baby and your wife to take care of. She had a support system and she wasn't alone. You made a tough decision and chose the best long-term option. You can keep your job while looking for another without leaving your family broken and penniless. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know.
Dude tries to ensure that his family has a roof over their head and everyone despises him for it. That's Reddit for you. And that's your baby, bruh. Those in-laws have no right to keep you from seeing it.
Am I the jerk for kicking my sister out for eating all my croissants? My older sister, Rosa, and I are not that close. Rosa and I come from a family with money. Growing up, we lived in a nice house with staff to do stuff for us. Our parents never encouraged us to be independent and spoiled us beyond compare. I never got a normal childhood, and I got the biggest culture shock when I left for university. I had to unlearn a lot of the thoughts that I grew up with. I moved away from my parents and I rarely speak to them. My parents tend to baby Rosa. In my opinion, this has caused her to become very entitled. She overreacts when things don't go her way and complains about everything and everyone when they make small mistakes. I do not speak to her often. A few weeks ago, Rosa called me and told me that my parents kicked her out of their house for a few weeks. She refused to tell me the details, but I could tell that she was very distraught. She asked me if she could stay with me for 2 weeks because she didn't want to live in a hotel. I was a bit hesitant, but my wife, Amy, convinced me to let her stay. The first thing I noticed about Rosa is that she is incapable of doing basic tasks. She can't boil water on the stove, can't boil an egg, and can barely fold her own clothes. On the second day of her stay, she left the stove unattended while she went outside. It's so bad that I almost consider her to be a hazard in the kitchen. Because of Rosa's inability to do anything, it's caused Amy and I to have to do everything for her. We have to constantly clean up for her, and she leaves huge messes, and it gets very frustrating. Amy feels bad for Rosa and offered to teach her a few things. Rosa declined because she doesn't need to, but Amy managed to convince her. Amy tried to teach her how to hold a knife properly, how to fold a t-shirt, and how to make a bed. Instead of trying to learn, Rosa would give up and claim that she couldn't do it, and that it would be much better if Amy did it for her since she's so much better at those things compared to her. Amy tried for a few days before she gave up. Amy made croissants. They took 2 days to make and she made 18 in total. The next day, Amy and I were out all day and didn't get to eat much. Imagine my surprise when Rosa told us that she ate all of the remaining croissants, 16. I got a bit mad and I told her that it was a bit inconsiderate, and she told me that she thought it was okay because the help could just make more. I got so angry, I told her that she can't keep living with us if she acts like an entitled jerk the entire time, and I kicked her out. She started pleading with me, but I insisted. Amy thinks I may have overreacted. Not the jerk. She called your wife the help. Immediate, eatable offense. And doing dangerous things like leaving the stove on might actually be deliberate to make you regret ever asking her to lift a finger, or at minimum, ensuring you don't do it again. Maybe that's too cynical, but I wouldn't put it past someone who'd refer to a sister-in-law or anyone as the help. I'd also be tempted to check the garbage for the 16 croissants. Store employee wouldn't give me my items because I don't have the same last name as my husband. My husband, Will Williams, for the purpose of this story, has a store card for a big box store that sells DIY stuff. I am an authorized user on the card. Even though we've been married 3 years, I didn't take his name. This has never been an issue before today. Will had surgery 2 days ago and decided this morning that he wanted to do some projects around the house while he's stuck at home recovering. So he purchased about $250 worth of stuff from the DIY store online and asked that I pick up the items because he can't drive yet. I drive to the DIY store, head to the pickup counter, and show the email and my license when asked. The woman looks at me and says, "You aren't Will Williams?" I explained that no, I am Will's wife, Flamingo Lemon. I'm here to pick up the order. I confirm Will's email address and phone number. According to her, I can't be Will Williams' wife because my last name isn't Williams, it's Lemon, and therefore I'm committing fraud. I showed her on my license that the address listed is the same as the address on the account. Nope, doesn't matter. Since our last names don't match, I'm committing fraud. Will has to pick up his own items. I explained that Will had surgery and has a cast on his leg, which is why he isn't able to pick up the items. I state that I am an authorized user on the card and that the email address Will put in when he placed is one I know. I've had 0 issues picking up stuff for him before. She starts trying to bend my license in half and I pull it out of her hand. I tell her this is ridiculous and ask when she gets off work so I can speak with someone who understands that people can be married and share a card and have a different last name. Then I walk away. As I'm leaving, she's yelling to me that I'm committing fraud, so the whole staff hears. I did yell back that I'm not, and I don't know what your problem is, and I walked out. But I'm fuming right now. Will is also upset, because now I have to drag him and his sore, casted leg back to the DIY store to get our stuff. I really want to call the manager and complain. Yes, it's a Karen move, especially with her trying to destroy my license. But I worry if I do, we will never see our stuff. Am I the jerk here? Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.